My son looked at the man standing next to me like he was seeing a ghost, a dirty, smelly ghost that had just walked into his pristine, glass-walled law office. He hissed at me, his voice dripping with venom, asking why I had brought a beggar to his place of business on the most important day of his career. He called security. He threw the gift I had spent 6 months saving for into the trash. He didn't know that the man in the ragged coat wasn't a beggar. He was the man who owned the building my son was standing in. He was the VIP client my son had been sweating over for weeks, and by the time the truth came out, it was too late for apologies. My name is Luther Banks, and this is how I lost a son but gained a brother. Before I continue this story, please like and subscribe if you have ever been underestimated by the people you love the most. Tell me in the comments where you are watching from. It started on a Tuesday, the kind of Tuesday that feels heavy before it even begins. I counted the coins on my kitchen table 3 times, $7.40. That was all I had left until my pension check came in next week. I am 69 years old. My hands are rough, covered in calluses from 40 years of laying railroad tracks, and my knees pop every time I stand up. I don't have much. I sold my truck 2 years ago to help pay for my son Terrence's student loans. I sold the family farm 5 years ago to pay off a gambling debt he swore was a mistake. Now I live in a small rental on the south side, and I take the bus. But today was special. It was Terrence's 35th birthday. In my pocket, wrapped in a brown paper bag because I couldn't afford fancy wrapping paper, was my father's watch. It was a vintage piece, gold-plated, timeless. It had stopped working years ago, but I had spent the last of my savings to get the gears fixed and the glass polished. It was the only thing of value I had left to give. I put on my best suit. It was charcoal gray, bought 10 years ago for a funeral. It was a little tight around the middle now, and the cuffs were fraying, but it was clean. I polished my work boots until they shone as best they could. I wanted to look dignified when I walked into my son's law firm. I walked to the bus stop. The humidity was already rising, making my shirt stick to my back. When the bus arrived, it was crowded. I squeezed in, holding the rail, trying to protect the watch in my pocket. That was when I saw him. In the back of the bus, there was an older white man. He looked older than me, maybe 75. He was wearing a trench coat that had seen better decades, stained with coffee and mud. His hair was a wild mess of gray, and he had a beard that hid half his face. He was muttering to himself, clutching a plastic bag. 3 teenagers were sitting near him, laughing. One of them, a boy with a cruel smile, kicked the man's foot. "Hey, old man," the boy sneered. "You smell like a wet dog. Get off the bus before we throw you off." The old man didn't look up. He just pulled his coat tighter around himself. The other passengers looked away. They stared at their phones. They stared at the floor. Nobody wanted to get involved. Nobody wanted to touch the trouble. I felt that familiar heat rise in my chest. It was the same heat I felt when I worked the rails, when supervisors would talk down to us like we were mules. I couldn't stand a bully. I pushed past a woman with a stroller and stood between the teenagers and the old man. I am not a big man, but 40 years of swinging a sledgehammer leaves a mark on your posture. I looked the boy in the eye. "That is enough," I said. My voice was low, steady. "Leave him alone." The boy stood up, chest puffed out. "Or what, Grandpa, you gonna make me?" I didn't blink. I stepped closer. "Yes, I am." The bus driver looked in the rearview mirror and shouted, "Hey, settle down back there or everyone walks." The boy scoffed, looked at his friends, and sat back down, muttering curses. I turned to the old man. "Are you all right?" I asked. He looked up at me. His eyes were surprising. They were a piercing blue, sharp alert. They didn't look like the eyes of a confused man. They looked like the eyes of a hawk scanning a field. "I am fine," he said. His voice was raspy. "Just forgot my wallet. Driver says I gotta pay or get off at the next stop." I looked at the driver. He was watching us. $2, the driver said. "Or he walks." I touched the coins in my pocket. $7.40. That was my lunch and dinner for the next 3 days. But I looked at the old man's worn-out shoes. I pulled out the coins. $2. I dropped them into the fare box. "He stays," I said. The old man looked at the coins, then at me. "You didn't have to do that," he said. I shrugged. We all need a hand sometimes. I sat down next to him. The rest of the ride was quiet. When my stop came up the downtown financial district, I stood up. To my surprise, the old man stood up too. "Are you following me?" I asked as we stepped onto the pavement. The city noise was loud horns, honking people rushing in expensive suits. The old man adjusted his dirty coat. Maybe he said, "Where are you going?" I pointed to the gleaming glass tower across the street. "The Banks and Associates law firm. My son works there. He is a partner. Or he is about to be." The old man smiled, a crooked, yellow-toothed smile. "A lawyer, huh? Fancy. I am going that way too. Mind if I tag along?" I hesitated. I didn't want to be rude, but I also knew how Terrence was. Terrence cared about image. He cared about appearances. Walking in with me in my frayed suit was already a risk. Walking in with a man who looked like he slept in a dumpster was asking for trouble. "Look," I said gently. "My son, he is a busy man. This is a high-end place." The old man laughed, a dry cackling sound. "I know what it is. Don't worry, Luther. I won't embarrass you. I just want to see the inside. I haven't been in a building like that in years. I don't know why I agreed. Maybe it was the loneliness I sensed in him. Maybe it was because I knew what it felt like to be shut out of places because of how you looked." "All right," I said. "But you stay in the lobby. My name is Jeremiah, by the way," he said, extending a grimy hand. I shook it. "Luther." We walked into the building. The air conditioning hit us like a wall of ice. The floors were marble polished so clean you could see your reflection. Men in $1,000 suits walked briskly talking into headsets. I felt small. I always felt small here. I walked to the reception desk. The young woman behind the counter looked up. Her eyes scanned my old suit, then darted to Jeremiah standing a few feet away looking at a sculpture like he was appraising it. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone icy. She didn't smile. I cleared my throat. "I am here to see Terrence Banks. I am his father." She typed something into her computer, looking skeptical. "Mr. Banks is extremely busy today. He has a very important meeting with a VIP client. He explicitly said no interruptions." "I know," I said. "It is his birthday. I just want to drop this off." I held up the paper bag. She sighed, reaching for the phone. "I will let him know you are here, but you cannot bring him." She pointed a manicured finger at Jeremiah. "He has to wait outside." Jeremiah turned around. "I am with him," he said. His voice had changed. It wasn't the raspy voice of a beggar anymore. It was firmer. The receptionist narrowed her eyes. "Sir, this is a private building. If you are not a client, you need to leave." Just then the elevator doors pinged open. Terrence stepped out. He looked magnificent. He was wearing a navy blue custom suit, a silk tie, and a watch that probably cost more than my house. He was laughing with a colleague, looking confident, powerful. My heart swelled with pride. That was my boy. That was the boy I had worked double shifts for. "Terrence," I called out. He froze. The smile vanished from his face instantly. He looked at me, and then he looked at Jeremiah. His face didn't just fall, it went pale, a sickly gray color. He walked over to us quickly, his steps sharp and angry on the marble floor. "Dad, what are you doing here?" He didn't hug me. He didn't say hello. He hissed the words through clenched teeth. He looked around the lobby as if checking to see if anyone important was watching. "Happy birthday, son," I said, smiling despite his coldness. "I brought you something." I held out the bag. Terrence didn't take it. He was staring at Jeremiah with pure disgust. "Who is this?" "Why did you bring a homeless man to my office, Dad? Are you insane?" "He is a friend," I said, feeling my face heat up. "I met him on the bus. He just wanted to see the building." "The bus," Terrence repeated the word like it was a disease. "You took the bus here, and you picked up a stray dad. I have the most important meeting of my life in 20 minutes. The Stone Group is coming. If they see this circus, I could lose everything." "He isn't a circus," I said, my voice hardening. "He is a human being, and I am your father. I just wanted to give you this." I pressed the bag into his chest. He grabbed it, not to hold it, but to get it away from me. He crumpled the top of the bag. "I don't have time for this," Terrence snapped. He turned to the security guard who was hovering nearby. "Earl, get this man out of here," he pointed at Jeremiah. "And Dad, you need to go, now. Go out the back exit so clients don't see you. The back exit, like I was trash, like I was dirty laundry." I felt a pain in my chest that had nothing to do with my heart and everything to do with heartbreak. Terrence, it is your grandfather's watch. I fixed it. I don't want your old junk, Dad, Terrence shouted. The lobby went silent. Everyone was looking. I don't want your dusty second-hand memories. I am trying to build a future here and you are dragging me back into the dirt. Just leave. He threw the paper bag. He didn't hand it back. He didn't put it down. He threw it. It hit the side of a metal trash can with a heavy thud. The sound of the glass cracking inside broke something in me too. Terrence turned his back on me and stormed toward the elevators. I stood there frozen. I wanted to yell. I wanted to grab him and shake him, but I was paralyzed by the shame of it. Then I saw movement. Jeremiah walked over to the trash can. He reached in and pulled out the bag. He opened it and took out the watch. The glass face was cracked down the middle. He looked at it for a long moment, then he looked at me. The look in his eyes had changed completely. The cloudy, wandering look of the old man on the bus was gone. In its place was something sharp, cold, and terrifyingly intelligent. It was the look of a predator who had just spotted prey. "Don't pick it up," Luther Jeremiah said softly. His voice was deep, commanding. "Leave it. Let him think it is trash." "Why?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "Because Jeremiah said," placing the broken watch gently into his own deep pocket, "today your son made a choice. He chose the suit over the man. He chose the image over the blood. And I am going to make sure he understands the cost of that choice." I didn't understand what he meant. I was too busy trying not to cry in the middle of the lobby. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a text message, not from Terrence. From his wife, my daughter-in-law, Courtney. The message read, "Terrence just texted me. He is furious. We talked about this, Luther. You are an embarrassment. We are putting the house on the market tomorrow. You have 3 days to get out. Don't bother coming to dinner tonight." I stared at the screen. The house. My house. The house I had signed over to Terrence 5 years ago because he said it would help with tax purposes, because he promised I could live there until I died. They were kicking me out. Jeremiah leaned over and looked at the screen. He read the message. A dark smile spread across his face, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a general going to war. 3 days, Jeremiah murmured. That is plenty of time. Come on, Luther. We have work to do. He turned and walked toward the main doors, his ragged coat flapping behind him. He didn't look like a beggar anymore. He walked like he owned the pavement. And for the first time in my life, I was scared of what my son had unleashed. I put my phone in my pocket and followed him. I had nowhere else to go. The bus ride back to the south side felt longer than usual. My chest still ached from the way Terrence had looked at me in that lobby. It was a look of pure shame. Not shame for his actions, but shame for my existence. I got off at the corner and walked toward the small bungalow that had been my sanctuary for 40 years. It was the house where my wife Etta took her last breath. It was the house where I bandaged Terrence's scraped knees and taught him how to tie a tie. But as I turned the corner, my stomach dropped. A sleek silver sedan was parked in the driveway. The front door was wide open. I ran. My bad knee protested with every step, but I ignored the pain. I burst through the front door, breathless and sweating. Inside the living room looked different. My old comfortable recliner was pushed against the wall. The family photos that had lined the mantelpiece were face down on the table. Standing in the center of the room was a woman with a laser tape measure. Next to her, holding a clipboard, was my daughter-in-law, Courtney. Courtney did not look up when I entered. She was pointing at the crown molding and saying something about open concepts and natural light. She was wearing a white pantsuit that looked like it would stain if you even breathed on it wrong. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a tight bun that pulled her face into a permanent sneer. "What are you doing?" I asked. My voice was loud, filling the small room. "Why are you moving my furniture?" Courtney finally turned her head. She looked at me the way one looks at a stain on a carpet. "Oh, you are here." She checked her diamond-encrusted watch. "You are early. We expected you to still be embarrassing your son at his office." I stepped forward, my hands shaking. "This is my house, Courtney. Get out." The woman with the tape measure looked uncomfortable. She lowered her device. "Mrs. Banks, maybe I should come back another time." "No, stay." Courtney's voice was sharp like breaking glass. "We are on a tight schedule. This will only take a minute." She turned her cold blue eyes back to me. "Luther, let us be clear about one thing. This is not your house. This house belongs to Terrence. And Terrence has decided to liquidate his assets. That means we are selling. Today. Selling. I repeated the word, feeling the air leave my lungs. You cannot sell it. Terrence promised me. Courtney laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. Promises do not hold up in court, Luther. Deeds do. Titles do. And the title says Terrence Banks. You are just a guest who has overstayed his welcome. She turned back to the realtor. Ignore him. He is leaving. Measure the kitchen next. I want to see if we can knock down that wall to create a breakfast nook. I stood there frozen as she dismissed me. She was talking about destroying the wall where Etta had marked Terrence's height every year until he was 18. She was talking about erasing my life. I am not leaving, I said. I sat down on my recliner. I planted my feet. I am not going anywhere. Courtney sighed a long, dramatic exhale of annoyance. She pulled her phone from her pocket. Do not make this difficult, old man. You are making a scene. I am making a scene, I shouted, slamming my hand on the armrest. 5 years ago, your husband came to me crying. He was in trouble. He had messed up a case. He was going to be sued for malpractice. He needed assets to hide. He needed to show he had collateral for a loan to pay off the settlement. He begged me, Courtney. He got on his knees in this very room and begged me to sign the deed over to him. I looked at the realtor, who was now backing away toward the door. Tell her, I said, pointing at the stranger. Tell her why I signed. He promised me it was just on paper. He promised me I would live here until they carried me out in a box. He said, Dad, you saved me, and I will protect you forever. That was his promise. Protection. Courtney rolled her eyes. That was 5 years ago. Markets change. Situations change. Terrence needs the liquidity. He has debt, Luther. Real debt. Not the petty cash you worry about. This house is the only thing of value he has left that is not leveraged to the hilt. We are selling it. And you are leaving. She walked over to me, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor my wife had polished every Sunday. Look at you, she spat. You are pathetic. Sitting in a chair that smells like old sweat and failure. Terrence is trying to be somebody. He is trying to rise above all this. And you are an anchor dragging him down. You think signing a paper 5 years ago makes you a saint. It makes you a fool. I looked at her, this woman who had never worked a day of hard labor in her life, who spent more on a handbag than I spent on groceries in a year. You are right, I said quietly. I was a fool. I was a fool to think my son raised by my hands and his mother's heart would ever let a woman like you poison him. But I am still his father, and I am not leaving my home. Courtney stared at me for a long moment. Her face showed no emotion, no empathy, just calculation. Fine, she said. Have it your way. She tapped her phone screen 3 times and put it to her ear. Yes, I need emergency assistance. I am at 422 Maple Street. There is a man here refusing to leave. He is becoming aggressive. I feel threatened. Yes, he is shouting. I think he might be violent. Please hurry. She hung up and smiled a small, terrified smile at the realtor. I am so sorry about this. He gets confused. It is the dementia, you know. It is sad, really. My mouth fell open. Dementia. Violent. She was lying with a calmness that was terrifying. I stood up to protest, to tell her to stop lying, but she flinched dramatically and stepped behind the realtor. See, she cried out. He is coming at me. I stopped. I realized then that I was trapped. Anything I did, anything I said would be twisted. I was a black man in a frayed suit shouting in a white woman's face. I knew how that story ended. I sat back down. I folded my hands. I waited. The siren's wail cut through the neighborhood silence 10 minutes later. 2 officers walked in. They were young, strong, and already had their hands near their belts. Mom, one officer asked, looking at Courtney. Thank God you are here, she said, her voice trembling perfectly. This man, he broke in. He claims he lives here, but the house belongs to my husband. I have the deed right here on my phone. We asked him to leave and he started screaming. He lunged at me. The officer looked at me. Sir, do you live here? I have lived here for 40 years, I said, my voice steady, though my heart was hammering. My son owns the house on paper, but... So you do not own the property? The officer interrupted. No, but. And the owner has asked you to leave. The owner is my son, I tried to explain. This woman is just... Sir, the officer's voice hardened. If the owner or his representative asks you to leave and you do not leave, that is criminal trespass. Now we can do this the hard way or the easy way. Do you have anywhere else to go? I looked at Courtney. She was checking her nails, pretending to be distressed. I looked at the walls of my home. I looked at the officers. I have nowhere, I said. The officer sighed. Then you need to come with us. We can drop you at a shelter downtown, but you cannot stay here. I stood up. I did not want to be dragged out of my own house in handcuffs. I did not want the neighbors watching me get shoved into a squad car. Let me get my things, I said. The officer looked at Courtney. She shrugged. He can take one bag. The rest goes in the trash tomorrow when the cleaners come. One bag. 40 years of life. 40 years of memories. Reduced to one bag. I walked to my bedroom. I grabbed an old duffel bag from the closet. I didn't pack clothes. I packed the photo album of Etta. I packed the medal I won for perfect attendance at the railroad. I packed the small wooden box where I kept my important papers. And I packed the Bible Etta had given me on our wedding day. That was it. That was all I could save. I walked back into the living room. Courtney was already talking to the realtor again, pointing at the light fixtures. She didn't look at me as I walked out the door. She didn't look at me as the officers escorted me down the driveway. They led me to the sidewalk. You are lucky she isn't pressing charges for the assault, the officer said. Do not come back here or you will be arrested. Understand. I nodded. They got in their car and drove away, leaving me standing on the curb. It started to rain, a slow, cold drizzle that soaked through my suit jacket in minutes. I stood there staring at my house, the house I had paid for with sweat and blood, the house I had given away out of love. My phone buzzed again. I pulled it out, shielding the screen from the rain. It was a text from Terrence. I read the words and felt a coldness spread through my body that had nothing to do with the rain. Dad, stop making scenes. Courtney told me what happened. You are losing it. I have already filled out the paperwork for the Shady Pines facility. It is a state home. They have a bed for you. Go there. It is for the best. You are too old to be dealing with a house anyway. Do not contact us until you are settled in. We need space. I lowered the phone. Shady Pines. Everyone knew Shady Pines. It was a warehouse for the forgotten, a place where people went to stare at walls until they died. It was a place for people who had no one. He wasn't just kicking me out. He was discarding me. He was throwing me away like I was that broken watch in the lobby trash can. I looked down the street. The bus stop was 2 blocks away. I had no money for a hotel. I had no friends rich enough to take me in. I had nothing but a bag of memories and a heart full of ash. But then I remembered Jeremiah. I remembered the look in his eyes when he took the watch out of the trash. I remembered what he said. We have work to do. I gripped the handle of my duffel bag. I wasn't going to Shady Pines. I wasn't going to fade away. My son wanted to treat me like a stranger. Fine. I would show him what a stranger could do. I turned my back on my house and started walking into the rain. I had a meeting to get to. The rain did not let up. It felt personal now, like the sky was trying to wash me off the pavement. I found a bench under a large oak tree in Centennial Park. It was the only dry spot I could find. My knees were throbbing with a dull ache that radiated up my thighs. I hugged my duffel bag to my chest, trying to keep the photo album inside dry. It was cold, a bone-deep cold that settled into your marrow and refused to leave. I closed my eyes and tried to imagine I was back in my recliner listening to the radiator hiss in my living room. Then a bright light blinded me. I raised my hand to shield my eyes. Hey, you cannot sleep here. Move along. The voice was harsh and authoritative. I squinted into the light. It was a private security guard. He looked young, maybe 20 years old. He was wearing a thick waterproof jacket and warm boots. He looked comfortable. I am not sleeping, son, I said, my voice raspy from the damp air. I am just resting my legs. I worked 40 years on the railroad. I have earned a minute to sit. The guard did not lower the flashlight. I do not care what you did. Park closes at dusk. No loitering. No vagrants. We have had complaints about the homeless harassing people. I stood up slowly, my joints popping audibly. I am not a vagrant. I am a taxpayer. I have lived in this city my whole life. I built the tracks you ride into town on. The guard took a step back, his hand hovering near his pepper spray. Look, old man, I do not want trouble. Just take your bag and go to the shelter on 5th. This is private property managed by the city conservancy. You are trespassing. Trespassing. The same word Courtney had used. The word that turned me from a citizen into a criminal. I looked at the guard. I saw the fear and disgust in his eyes. He did not see a man. He saw a problem to be removed. I understand, I said quietly. I am leaving. I walked out of the park, the rain immediately soaking my hair and running down my neck. I felt a shame so deep it burned. I had worked my hands to the bone since I was 16. I had never asked for a handout. I had never broken a law. And here I was being chased out of a public park like a stray dog. I walked block after block. The city lights blurred through the rain. I was invisible. I was a ghost haunting the streets I used to walk with my head held high. Luther. The voice came from the shadows of an alleyway. I stopped, gripping my bag tight. I turned around, ready to fight or run. A figure stepped out from under a broken awning. It was Jeremiah. He was still wearing that filthy trench coat, but he was holding a large black umbrella that looked brand new. "You look like a drowned rat, Luther," he said. I wiped the water from my eyes. "I have nowhere to go, Jeremiah. They kicked me out. My own son kicked me out." "I know," Jeremiah said. "I saw the text. Come on, you cannot stay out here. You will catch pneumonia and die, and that would be too easy for them." He started walking briskly down the street. I hesitated. "Where are we going?" "The shelter is the other way." "We are not going to a shelter," Jeremiah called back over his shoulder. "We are going to my place." I followed him. We walked for 20 minutes, leaving the nice part of the city behind. We entered the industrial district where the warehouses were boarded up and the street lights were broken. The smell of old grease and river water hung in the air. Jeremiah stopped in front of a building that looked like it had been condemned in the 90s. The windows were boarded up with plywood. Graffiti covered the brick walls. The front door was rusted steel covered in warning stickers. "Here we are," Jeremiah said. I looked at the building and then at him. "Jeremiah, appreciate the offer, but I do not think I can sleep in a squat. My back cannot take the concrete floor." Jeremiah chuckled. It was a low rumble. "Do not judge a book by its cover, Luther. You of all people should know that." He walked up to the rusted door. He didn't pull a key. He reached into his dirty coat and pulled out a sleek black card. He tapped it against a panel hidden behind a loose brick. There was a mechanical whirring sound and the heavy steel door clicked open. I stared at him. He winked and held the door open. "After you." I stepped inside. The air changed instantly. It was warm. It smelled of cedar and expensive leather. I was standing in a small vestibule with a private elevator. The walls were lined with polished steel. Jeremiah walked past me and pressed his thumb against a scanner next to the elevator. The doors slid open silently. We stepped in and he pressed the button for the top floor. When the doors opened again, I gasped. We were in a penthouse. But not just any penthouse. It was a fortress of luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the rain-soaked city. But from here, the city looked like a jewel box. The floors were mahogany. There were leather sofas that looked like they cost more than my lifetime earnings. A massive fireplace crackled in the corner. Jeremiah took off his wet trench coat and threw it on the floor. Underneath, he was wearing a suit that made my son's clothes look cheap. He walked to a bar in the corner and poured 2 glasses of amber liquid. "Welcome to the Lioness Den," he said, handing me a glass. "Drink up. It will warm your bones." I took the glass, my hand shaking. "Jeremiah, who are you? You look like a bum on the street, but you live like a king." Jeremiah took a sip and sighed. "I am a man who got tired of the lies, Luther. I am Jeremiah Stone. I own Stone Industries, real estate, tech, shipping. If it makes money in this city, I probably have a hand in it." "The Stone Group," I whispered. "My son. He was waiting for you today. You were the VIP client." Jeremiah nodded. "I was. But I wanted to see who I was doing business with. I wanted to see the man, not the resume." He gestured for me to sit. I sank into the leather sofa. It was soft and supportive. "Why the disguise?" I asked. "Why the bus?" Jeremiah sat opposite me. 5 years ago, my children tried to have me committed. I have 3 of them. 2 sons and a daughter. They claimed I was losing my mind. They said I was making reckless decisions. They filed for conservatorship. They wanted control of the empire I built. He swirled his drink, his blue eyes darkening. They did not know that I retained the best lawyers in the country. I fought them. I won. But it broke me, Luther. To look across a courtroom and see your own blood lying to a judge just so they could get their hands on your checkbook. It kills something inside you. I nodded, feeling a lump in my throat. I know that feeling. After the trial, I disappeared. Jeremiah continued. I let everyone think I had become eccentric, reclusive. I started dressing like this. I started riding the bus. I wanted to see how people treated me when they thought I had nothing. It is an amazing filter, Luther. You see the true nature of people when they think you have no power to help them or hurt them. He pointed at me with his glass. Today you helped me. You did not know who I was. You had $7 to your name and you spent 2 of them on a stranger who smelled like garbage. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. And then I saw your son. Jeremiah's face hardened. I saw how he looked at you. I saw him throw away a piece of his history because it did not match his office furniture. He is weak, Luther. He is hollow. But he is my son, I said softly. And that is why you are here, Jeremiah said. Why did you not sue him, Luther? He stole your house. He manipulated you. You could take him to court. I looked down at my hands. Because I changed his diapers, Jeremiah. Because I taught him to ride a bike. Because I promised his mother on her deathbed that I would always look out for him. Jeremiah leaned forward. And who is looking out for you? He put you on the street in the rain. He sent you to a place where people go to die. That is not a son. That is a predator. And predators only respect one thing. Force. He stood up. Go shower, Luther. There are clothes in the guest room. They will fit you. We have a big day tomorrow. I did as he said. I stood under the hot water for a long time, washing away the dirt of the park and the shame of the eviction. I slept in a bed with sheets that felt like silk. For the first time in hours, I felt safe. But safety is an illusion when you are being hunted. I woke up the next morning to the smell of bacon and coffee. Sunlight streamed through the massive windows. For a second, I forgot where I was. Then it all came flooding back. I walked into the living area wearing the clean clothes Jeremiah had laid out, a soft cashmere sweater and slacks. Jeremiah was at the table reading a newspaper. Morning, Luther. Sleep well. Before I could answer, there was a buzzing sound from the console near the elevator. Jeremiah frowned and pressed a button. A video screen lit up showing the vestibule downstairs. A man in a cheap suit was standing there holding a tablet. Delivery for Luther Banks, the man said into the intercom. My blood ran cold. How did they know I was here? I had not told anyone. I didn't even know the address myself. Jeremiah looked at me, his eyes narrowing. You have a tracker on your phone, Luther. Or your son is smarter than I thought. He pressed the button to let the man up. The elevator opened and the man stepped out, looking around the penthouse with wide eyes. He spotted me and walked over, thrusting a thick envelope into my hands. You have been served, Mr. Banks, he said. Have a nice day. He left as quickly as he came. I opened the envelope. My hands were trembling so hard I almost ripped the papers. I read the cover sheet. Superior Court of the State, Plaintiff Terrence Banks, Defendant Luther Banks. It was a restraining order. And below that a petition for emergency guardianship. The document claimed that I was suffering from advanced dementia. It claimed that I had become violent and aggressive toward my family. It claimed that I was a danger to myself and others. It cited the incident at the house yesterday, claiming I had attacked Courtney. But the worst part was the address listed for me. Current location, unknown transient. They had tracked my phone to this building. They knew I was here. They weren't just kicking me out. They were hunting me down to lock me up so I couldn't fight back. I looked at Jeremiah. He took the papers from my hand and read them. A low growl started in his throat. They are fast, he said, and they are ruthless. He looked up at me, a fierce grin spreading across his face. Good. I hate an easy fight. Get your shoes, Luther. We are going to court, and we are going to bring a few surprises of our own. The air in the courtroom smelled of floor wax and old lies. I sat at the defendant's table feeling smaller than I ever had in my life. My hands, the hands that had laid miles of steel track across this state, were trembling against the polished wood. I looked to my left. Jeremiah was not there. The bailiff had stopped him at the door because of his coat. I was alone. Across the aisle sat my son. Terrence looked immaculate. He was wearing a gray suit that fit him like a second skin. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at his lawyer, a man named Mr. Thorne, who had a smile like a shark sensing blood in the water. Behind them sat Courtney. She was wearing a black dress and oversized sunglasses, dabbing at dry eyes with a tissue. She looked like a grieving widow, except I wasn't dead yet. All rise, the bailiff shouted. Judge Reynolds walked in. He was an older man with a face carved from granite and eyes that looked tired of seeing the worst in people. He sat down and opened the file. Mr. Thorne stood up. He buttoned his jacket with a confident snap. "Your Honor, we are here today to request an emergency guardianship over Mr. Luther Banks. We do not do this lightly. This is a tragedy for the family, but we have no choice. Mr. Banks has become a danger to himself and, more frighteningly, to those around him." I gripped the table edge. A danger. I had never raised a hand in anger in my life. I looked at Terrence, willing him to look at me to remember who I was. He kept his eyes on the floor. "Do you have evidence of these claims, Counselor?" Judge Reynolds asked. "We do, Your Honor." Mr. Thorne walked to the bench and handed over a thick file. "We have a sworn affidavit from Dr. Aris, a geriatric specialist. He examined Mr. Banks 3 months ago. His findings are conclusive. Advanced dementia with paranoid delusions and aggressive tendencies." I stood up. "That is a lie," I shouted. My voice cracked. "I never met a Dr. Aris. I have never seen that man in my life." "Sit down, Mr. Banks," the judge said sharply. "You will have your turn." Mr. Thorne turned to look at me, his face full of fake pity. "You see, Your Honor, the outbursts, the denial. It is classic symptomology. Dr. Aris notes that Mr. Banks often forgets appointments or believes they never happened. But the medical records do not lie. He has the brain function of a man much older. He forgets who his family is. He forgets where he lives. He forgets where he lives because they kicked me out," I muttered, but the judge didn't hear me. Mr. Thorne continued. "But it gets worse, Your Honor. It is not just memory loss. It is violence. 2 days ago, police were called to Mr. Banks's former residence. He had broken in and was threatening his daughter-in-law, Courtney Banks. We have the police report here." He held up another paper. Courtney let out a small staged sob from the gallery. "He came at me." Courtney whispered loud enough for the room to hear. He had a look in his eyes. "I thought he was going to kill me." "Liar," I roared. I slammed my hand on the table. The bailiff took a step toward me, his hand on his belt. "I told you to get out of my house. You were stealing my home." Mr. Thorne shook his head sadly. "You see, Your Honor, he believes it is his house. He signed the deed over to his son 5 years ago. He has no memory of it. He is living in a fantasy world, and when reality intrudes, he becomes violent. We are asking for immediate placement in the Shady Pines Secure Facility, for his own safety." I felt like I was drowning. They had twisted everything. My generosity had become my sickness. My love had become my weakness. They had manufactured a medical history, a police record, a narrative so complete that even I was starting to question reality. Was I crazy? Did I imagine the betrayal? Then Terrence stood up. It was time for the performance of his life. He walked to the witness stand. He looked like a broken man. He looked like a son carrying the weight of the world. "State your name," the clerk said. "Terrence Banks," he said softly. "Mr. Banks, tell the court why you are doing this," Mr. Thorne asked gently. Terrence looked at me then. Tears welled up in his eyes. Real wet tears. He was a better actor than I ever gave him credit for. "I love my dad," Terrence said, his voice trembling. "He was my hero growing up. He worked so hard for us. But the man sitting there, that is not my father anymore." He wiped his eyes. It started small, forgetting keys, forgetting names. But then he started getting angry. He started accusing me of stealing from him. Me, his own son. He gave me the house years ago to protect his assets, but now he says I tricked him. He calls Courtney horrible names. Terrence took a deep breath. "I tried to care for him at home, but I can't anymore. I am afraid for my wife. I am afraid for my unborn children. I just want him to be safe. I want him to get the help he needs. Shady Pines is the best place for him. Please, Your Honor, help me help my father." The courtroom was silent. Even the court reporter looked moved. It was a masterpiece of betrayal. He had taken my dignity and set it on fire, warming his hands over the flames. I stood up again slowly. The lawyer Jeremiah had hired a public defender who looked like he hadn't slept in a week, tried to pull me down. "Sit down, Luther," he hissed. "You are making it worse." I shook him off. I looked at the judge. "Your Honor," I said. My voice was steady this time. "That man is lying. I do not have dementia. I have a broken heart. I signed that house over because he was in trouble. He promised me a home. Now he is selling it to pay debts he won't tell you about. This isn't about safety, it is about money. Mr. Thorne jumped up. Objection. Relevance. Sustained, the judge said. Mr. Banks, do you have any medical evidence to refute Dr. Aris's report? I froze. I didn't. I had nothing. I had a bag of clothes and a friend waiting outside. No. Your Honor, I said. Then I am inclined to grant the petition, the judge said, picking up his gavel. At that exact moment, the heavy oak doors at the back of the courtroom creaked open. A draft of cold air swept into the room. Everyone turned. Jeremiah stood there. He had gotten past the bailiff somehow. He was still wearing the filthy trench coat. His hair was still a wild mess. He looked like a stain on the pristine woodwork of the court. He walked down the center aisle, his boots clomping loudly on the floor. He didn't look at me. He looked straight at the bench. Terrence let out a short, incredulous laugh. He leaned over to Courtney. Look at this, he whispered loudly. He brought his drinking buddy. This is the circus I was talking about. Mr. Thorne stood up indignant. Your Honor, who is this man? This is a closed hearing. Security should remove him. The bailiff moved to intercept Jeremiah. Sir, you cannot be in here. Jeremiah stopped. He didn't say a word. He just reached up with a grimy hand and adjusted the lapel of his coat. He tapped his nose twice with his index finger, a slow, deliberate movement. Then he looked directly at Judge Reynolds and nodded once. It was a small gesture. To anyone else, it looked like a nervous tic. But I saw the judge's face. Judge Reynolds froze. His hand holding the gavel stopped in midair. He squinted, looking past the dirt and the beard. His eyes widened. The color drained from his face, replaced by a look of sudden, terrified recognition. It was the look of a man who realizes he is standing on a trap door. Terrence didn't see the judge's face. He was too busy smirking at me. See, Dad, he mouthed. You are pathetic. Judge Reynolds cleared his throat. It sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. He set the gavel down. Gently. Mr. Thorne, the judge said, his voice sounding tight. I find that I need to review this medical evidence more thoroughly. Mr. Thorne looked confused. But, Your Honor, the report is clear. It is an open and shut case. Nothing is open and shut when we are talking about a man's freedom, the judge snapped. His eyes darted to Jeremiah again, then quickly away. I am ordering an independent medical evaluation. Court appointed. But, Your Honor, Terrence stood up, losing his cool. We cannot wait. He is dangerous. He needs to be locked up today. Sit down, Mr. Banks, the judge roared. Unless you want to be held in contempt, I will not sign away a man's rights based on one affidavit from a doctor I have never met. We are adjourned for 48 hours. Mr. Banks is released on his own recognizance. He banged the gavel, hard. Then he stood up and practically ran into his chambers, casting one last fearful glance at the homeless man in the back of the room. The courtroom erupted into murmurs. Terrence looked like he had been slapped. He turned to Mr. Thorne. What just happened? Fix this. Jeremiah turned and walked out the way he came, winking at me as he pushed through the doors. I walked out of the courtroom feeling lightheaded. I had survived. I didn't know how, but I had survived. I walked down the marble steps of the courthouse into the bright afternoon sun. I was looking for Jeremiah, but he was gone. Luther. The voice came from behind a pillar. It was Terrence. He was standing in the shadow smoking a cigarette. I didn't know he smoked. He looked rattled. His perfect hair was a mess. He threw the cigarette down and crushed it with his expensive Italian shoe. He walked up to me and grabbed my arm. His grip was hard, painful. He wasn't crying anymore. The loving sun mask was gone. In its place was the face of a stranger. A desperate, dangerous stranger. You think this is funny? He hissed, leaning close to my face. I could smell the stale tobacco and expensive mints on his breath. You think bringing your bum friends to scare the judge buys you time. It buys you nothing. Let go of me, Terrence, I said, trying to pull away. He tightened his grip. Listen to me, old man. You are going to Shady Pines. You are going to sign those papers voluntarily tomorrow. Or what I asked, looking him in the eye. Or accidents happen, Terrence whispered. His voice was cold flat. Old men get confused. They walk into traffic. They fall down stairs. The city is a dangerous place, Dad, especially for someone with dementia. He smiled. It was the most terrifying thing I had ever seen. It was the smile of a man who had crossed a line and didn't care. Think about it. he said. Be a good father for once. Die quietly, or I will help you along. He shoved me backward and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. I stood there trembling, the sun feeling cold on my skin. He had threatened to kill me. My own son, the boy I held when he had nightmares. He was the nightmare now. I looked around for Jeremiah. I needed to find him. I needed to tell him. This wasn't just a legal battle anymore. It was a fight for my life. And I knew standing there on the courthouse steps that I was done playing the victim. If Terrence wanted a war, he was going to get one. I stumbled away from the courthouse feeling like the pavement was dissolving under my boots. My breath came in short, ragged gasps. He was going to kill me. My own son, the boy I taught to fish, the boy I held when he scraped his knee. He had looked me in the eye and promised me an accident. I walked blindly down the street, bumping into strangers, muttering apologies they did not hear. I just needed to get away. I needed to find a hole and crawl into it. Maybe Shady Pines was the answer. At least there I would be, behind locked doors where he couldn't get to me. I found Jeremiah sitting on a bench a few blocks away, feeding pigeons with a bag of stale popcorn. He looked up as I approached. He saw the terror in my eyes. He saw the way my hands were shaking so hard I had to shove them into my pockets. Get in the car, Luther, he said, standing up. A black town car idled at the curb. I shook my head, backing away. I can't, Jeremiah. I can't do this anymore. He threatened me. He said I would have an accident. I am just an old man. I am a retired rail worker. I cannot fight lawyers and judges and threats. I am done. I am going to the shelter. I am going to disappear. Jeremiah stepped forward. His face was hard like granite. You think disappearing will save you. You think he will stop just because you hide. He needs you dead, Luther. Dead men do not contest wills. Dead men do not take back houses. I turned to walk away, tears blurring my vision. I don't care. I just want peace. That was when he hit me. It wasn't a punch. It was a sharp, stinging slap across my face. It shocked me more than it hurt. I froze, my hand flying to my cheek. I stared at him. Jeremiah grabbed my shoulders, his grip like iron. Wake up, he growled. His voice was low and dangerous. You want peace. There is no peace for the weak. There is only the grave. Do you want to live, or do you want to die? I looked at him. I saw the fire in his blue eyes. Answer me, Luther. Do you want to die like a dog in the street, or do you want to live like a man? I want to live, I whispered. Then get in the car. I got in the car. The leather seats were cool and smelled of expensive polish. Jeremiah sat next to me. He tapped on the glass partition and the driver pulled away into traffic. We didn't go back to the penthouse. We drove into the financial district, deep into the canyons of steel and glass where money slept. We stopped in front of a building that looked like a fortress. It was an old bank built when banks were temples. Stone pillars, heavy brass doors. Jeremiah led me inside. The guards nodded to him despite his ragged coat. We took an elevator down past the lobby, down past the parking garage. When the doors opened, we were in a vault. It was silent. The air was cool and recycled. Jeremiah walked to a wall of safety deposit boxes. He didn't use a key. He used a retinal scan and a voice code. A massive drawer clicked open. He pulled out a thick black binder and tossed it onto a steel table in the center of the room. Sit down, Luther. I sat. Jeremiah opened the binder. It wasn't money. It was deeds, stock certificates, bonds. It was a map of an empire. You see this, Jeremiah said, pointing to a document. This is the deed to the building we are in. You see this one. This is the deed to the industrial park on the west side. And this. He slammed a document down in front of me. I put on my reading glasses. It was a deed for a commercial high-rise at 400 Liberty Street. That is Terrence S. office building, I said. Jeremiah nodded. I bought it 3 months ago through a shell company. I am his landlord, Luther. I own the ground he walks on. I own the roof over his head. I could evict his firm tomorrow if I wanted to. He leaned across the table. But I don't want to evict him. I want to crush him. And I need you to help me. Me, I asked. I am nobody. You are his father, Jeremiah said. You are the one person he underestimates. And that is our greatest weapon. He started pacing the small room. We are going to execute a hostile takeover, Luther. Not of a company, of a life. But first you need to look the part. You walk like a man who expects to be kicked. You talk like a man apologizing for his existence. That stops now. He grabbed my chin and lifted my head, shoulders back. Look me in the eye. When you walk into a room, you own it. Not because you have money, but because you have nothing left to lose. A man with nothing to lose is the most dangerous man in the world. Do you understand? I straightened my spine. I thought about the railroad. I thought about the days I swung a hammer for 10 hours straight in the blazing sun. I was strong then. I was proud. I understand, I said. My voice was deeper, stronger. Good, Jeremiah said. Now let me show you why your son is so desperate, why he is willing to kill his own father. He reached into the back of the drawer and pulled out a different folder. This one was red. He slid it across the table. Open it. I opened the folder. Inside were photos. Grainy photos taken with a long-range lens. They showed Terrence coming out of a basement club in the bad part of town. He looked sweaty, disheveled. In the photos he was arguing with a large man who had a tattoo of a spider on his neck. There were copies of bank statements, withdrawals of $5,000, $10,000, cash advances, and then a single sheet of paper with a handwritten note, $500,000, by Friday. Or we take a finger. Every day after that we take another. I felt sick. $500,000. Who are these people, I asked. The Greeks, Jeremiah said. They run the biggest illegal gambling ring in the state. Your son has a problem, Luther. He likes to bet on things he cannot control. Horses, boxing, cards. He is down $500,000, and the deadline is in 3 days. I stared at the photos. This was why he needed the house. This was why he needed to put me away. He needed my assets. He needed to liquidate everything I had to save his own skin. He wasn't just greedy. He was terrified. He is going to die, I whispered. If he doesn't pay them, they are going to kill him. Jeremiah nodded. Yes, and he decided that your life was worth less than his. He decided to trade you for his safety. He mortgaged you, Luther. A cold rage settled in my stomach. It replaced the fear. It replaced the sadness. My son had looked at me and seen a check to be cashed. He had looked at 40 years of love and seen a way to pay off a bookie. What do we do? I asked. We buy the debt, Jeremiah said simply. I have already reached out to the Greeks. They do not care who pays as long as they get paid. I am buying his marker tomorrow. You're going to pay his debt, I asked, shocked. No, Jeremiah smiled a wolfish grin. I am going to become his collector. I am going to hold the leash, and you, Luther, are going to hold the whip. Just then my phone buzzed in my pocket. The sound echoed in the quiet vault. I pulled it out. It was a picture of Courtney. Answer it, Jeremiah commanded. Put it on speaker. I swiped the screen. Hello, Dad? Courtney's voice came through the speaker. It was sweet, sugary, thick with fake concern. It was a voice I hadn't heard in years. Dad, we are so worried about you. Terrence told me about the courthouse. He is a mess, Dad. He is crying right now. He is crying, I said flatly, looking at the photos of him with the loan shark. He feels terrible, Courtney continued. We all do. We realized we handled this wrong. The stress of the baby, the work. We took it out on you. We want to make it right. Make it right, I repeated. Yes. Please come to dinner tonight, at the house. Just family, no lawyers, no doctors, just us. We want to apologize. We want to come to an agreement that works for everyone. Maybe you can keep the house. We just want you home. I looked at Jeremiah. He drew a finger across his throat. It was a trap, a sweet, deadly trap. I don't know, Courtney, I said. Please, Dad. For Terrence. He needs his father. Come at 7. We are making pot roast. Your favorite. My favorite was fried chicken. She didn't even know. Okay, I said. I will be there. She hung up quickly. Jeremiah looked at me. Pot roast, he scoffed. They are going to poison you, Luther. Or they are going to have the orderlies waiting in the bedroom to grab you the second you step inside. I know, I said. I am not going. Yes, you are, Jeremiah said, closing the binder. You are going. But you are not going alone, and you are not going unprotected. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small black device. It was no bigger than a quarter. This is a recorder, he said. Military grade. It transmits directly to a cloud server. It picks up a whisper from across the room. He walked over to me and pinned it to the underside of my collar. You are going to that dinner, Jeremiah said. You are going to let them talk. You are going to let them think they have won. You are going to let them confess. Do not eat anything. Do not drink anything. Do not sign anything unless you read it 3 times. And if you feel unsafe, you say the word pineapple. I will have a team listening. We will be through the door in 10 seconds. I touched the small device on my collar. I felt like a spy. I felt like a soldier. Why are you doing this for me, Jeremiah? I asked. You are a billionaire. You have an empire to run. Why save an old man who can't even pay for a bus ticket? Jeremiah put his hand on my shoulder. Because Luther, when my children came for me, I was alone. I had money, but I had no one. You are not alone. And I want to see the look on your son's face when he realizes he bet against the wrong man. He closed the vault door. The heavy steel bolt slid into place with a sound like a guillotine. Let us go get you ready, Jeremiah said. Tonight you are going to give the performance of your life. Tonight you are going to be the father who forgives, and then tomorrow you will be the judge who executes. I stood on the front porch of the house that I had paid for with 40 years of sweat. I smoothed down the expensive jacket Jeremiah had lent me. Underneath the collar, the small black recorder felt heavy against my skin like a second heart beating out of rhythm. I took a deep breath and knocked. The door swung open instantly. Courtney stood there. She wasn't wearing her usual power suit. She was wearing a floral apron over a modest dress. Her hair was down. She looked like a greeting card mother. Dad, she said, her voice thick with emotion. You came. Thank God. She threw her arms around me. The scent of her expensive perfume was overpowering. I stood stiffly, my arms at my sides. I wanted to push her away. I wanted to ask her why she had called the police on me 2 days ago. But I remembered Jeremiah's instructions. Play the part, Luther. Be the confused, tired old man they want you to be. I patted her back awkwardly. I just want to come home, Courtney, I said, my voice trembling slightly. I know, she whispered, pulling back to wipe a tear that looked remarkably real. Come in. Terrence is in the dining room. I walked inside. The house smelled of pot roast and floor wax. The dining table was set with the good china the set Etta had saved for Christmas dinners. Candles were flickering. Terrence was standing by the head of the table. He looked exhausted. His eyes were red-rimmed and his tie was loosened. When he saw me, he didn't look angry. He looked broken. Dad, he said. He walked over and hugged me. It was a desperate, crushing hug. I could feel the tension in his frame. I could feel the tremor in his hands. I am sorry, Dad, he mumbled into my shoulder. I am so sorry. The stress, the baby. I lost my way. I looked at the wall over his shoulder. I saw the empty space where my picture used to hang. It is okay, son, I said, lying through my teeth. I know you did not mean those things at the courthouse. We sat down. Courtney served the food. It was pot roast, just like she said. It looked delicious, but my stomach was a knot of iron. Jeremiah had warned me, do not eat, do not drink. I pushed the meat around my plate with my fork. Aren't you hungry? Dad, Terrence asked, watching me closely. My stomach is a little upset, I said. The stress, you know. Of course, Courtney said soothingly. Just relax. We are family here. They started talking. They talked about how hard things had been. They talked about how much they missed having me around. They spun a web of lies, so beautiful and sticky I almost wanted to get caught in it. They apologized for the police. They apologized for the locks. They blamed it on panic. They blamed it on confusion. We just want you safe, Dad, Terrence said, pouring himself a large glass of wine. That is all we ever wanted. We thought the nursing home would be safer, but maybe we were wrong. Maybe you belong here with us. I looked at him. I saw the sweat beading on his forehead. I saw the way his leg bounced under the table. He wasn't talking about safety. He was talking about time. He had 3 days to pay the Greeks. He was running out of clock. I touched the recorder on my collar. I miss this, I said softly. I miss my family. We missed you too, Courtney said. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Her palm was cold. Then came the turn, the moment the trap sprung. Terrence cleared his throat. He reached under his chair and pulled out a leather portfolio. He placed it on the table, moving the candle aside. Dad, since you are moving back in, we need to make sure everything is handled correctly this time, he said. We do not want any more misunderstandings with the police or the courts. We want to protect you. He opened the folder. Inside was a thick document stapled at the top. What is this? I asked, squinting at the paper. It is a reconciliation agreement, Courtney said quickly. It just says that we are all living together again and that Terrence will help you manage your affairs so you do not have to worry about bills or taxes. It is just a formality, Dad, a peace treaty. I put on my reading glasses. The words swam before my eyes. I didn't need to read it to know what it was. It was a power of attorney. It was a voluntary surrender of guardianship. It was a confession of incompetence. If I signed this, I was handing over my life, my bank accounts, and my freedom. I picked up the pen Terrence offered. My hand shook violently. I didn't have to fake the shaking much. The rage inside me was doing the work. I cannot read this, son, I said, my voice quavering. The print is too small. I do not understand these legal words. You do not need to read it, Dad, Terrence said, his voice tightening. I read it. It is standard. It just lets me take care of you. Just sign on the line. I lowered the pen to the paper, then lifted it again. Maybe I should show this to that lawyer I met, I said innocently, just to be sure. Terrence slammed his hand on the table. The wine glasses jumped. No lawyers, he snapped. We agreed, Dad. No lawyers, no doctors, just family. Why do you not trust me? I am your son. I looked at him. I saw the desperation bleeding through the mask. I do trust you, Terry, I said, using his childhood nickname. But I am scared. Scared of what Courtney asked, her voice sharp. Scared of making a mistake, I said, dropping the pen. It rolled across the table. I cannot sign this tonight. I need to sleep on it. The air in the room changed instantly. The warmth evaporated. The candle flame seemed to shrink. Terrence stood up. His chair scraped loudly against the floor. He walked around the table until he was standing over me. He loomed large, his shadow falling over my plate. We do not have time for you to sleep on it, he hissed. What do you mean, I asked, shrinking back into my chair. I mean, sign the damn paper, old man. Terrence, Courtney warned, but he ignored her. He grabbed my shoulder, digging his fingers into my collarbone. You think you have a choice. You have no choice. You are destitute. You are homeless. I am the only thing standing between you and the gutter. Now pick up the pen. I looked up at him. My eyes were wide with feigned terror, but inside I was memorizing every word for the recorder. Why are you doing this, son? I whimpered. Because I need the money, Terrence shouted. He lost control. The dam broke. I owe $500,000, Dad. Do you understand that? $500,000. If I do not get access to the equity in this house by tomorrow morning, they are going to kill me. They are going to cut me into pieces. I gasped. The confession. It was recorded. It was done. You gambled it away, I whispered. I tried to win it back. He screamed, shaking me. I tried to fix it. But I need your signature. I need to sell this place. I need your pension. I need everything. Now sign the paper, or so help me God, I will break your hand and make you sign it. He shoved the pen into my hand. I cannot, I cried. My hand, it hurts. I cannot hold it. Use your thumb. Then he roared. He grabbed an ink pad from the portfolio. He flipped to the back page of the document. Print your name, he ordered. I stared at the paper. This was the moment. Jeremiah had given me a small tin of wax earlier. He told me to rub it on my thumb before I went in. He said it would disrupt the ridges of the print, making it useless for legal identification, but to the naked eye it would look real. I had applied it in the car. I hesitated one last time, letting him see my fear. Please, Terry, I begged. Do not do this. Just do it, he yelled, grabbing my wrist. He smashed my thumb onto the ink pad, then forced it down onto the paper. He pressed hard, grinding my thumb into the line. There, he said, pulling away. He looked at the smudge. It looked like a fingerprint. He smiled a wild, manic smile. It is done. He snatched the paper away and handed it to Courtney. Lock this in the safe, he ordered. Tonight. Courtney took the paper and ran out of the room. Terrence looked down at me. He was breathing hard, sweating. He adjusted his tie. You did the right thing, Dad, he said. His voice suddenly calm again, detached. It is better this way. I stood up slowly, clutching my chest. Can I go to my room now, son? I am very tired. Terrence laughed. It was a cold, cruel sound. Your room. You do not have a room here anymore, Dad. We sold the house this morning. The buyers take possession on Monday. What I asked, letting the shock wash over me. But you said... I said a lot of things, Terrence interrupted. Look, I cannot have you here. You are a liability. You ask too many questions. And honestly, looking at you makes me sick. He pulled out his phone. I already called them. They are on their way. Called who I asked, backing toward the front door. Shady Pines, Terrence said. I told them you had a violent episode. I told them you signed the voluntary commitment papers but then got confused. They are sending a transport van. They have a nice padded room waiting for you. He walked to the door and opened it. The cool night air rushed in. Get out on the porch and wait for them, he said. Do not try to run. You have nowhere to go. I walked out onto the porch. My legs felt heavy. I turned back to look at him one last time. I love you, son, I said quietly. Terrence didn't even blink. Goodbye, Luther. He slammed the door in my face. I heard the deadbolt slide home. I stood alone in the dark. The streetlights buzzed overhead. I touched the recorder on my collar. I had it. I had the threats. I had the confession. I had the proof of coercion. But then headlights swept across the lawn. A white van with no markings turned onto the street. It moved slowly, prowling. It stopped right in front of the house. 2 men stepped out. They were huge, wearing white scrubs that looked more like uniforms. One of them held a strap. The other held a syringe. There he is, one of them said, pointing at me. The son said he might be aggressive. They started walking up the driveway. I froze. This wasn't part of the plan. Jeremiah said he would be listening. Jeremiah said he would have a team. Where were they? I whispered the word. Pineapple. Nothing happened. The men kept coming. Pineapple, I said louder. The men reached the steps. Mr. Banks, one of them said, his voice flat. We are here to take you to your new home. Please do not resist. I backed up until my back hit the door. Pineapple, I shouted. The man with the syringe stepped forward. Grab him. They lunged. The needle grazed the skin of my neck. It felt cold, like a drop of ice water. I kicked out with everything I had left. My steel-toed boot connected with the shin of the man holding the syringe. He grunted in pain and his grip loosened for a fraction of a second. I twisted away, but the other man, the one with the strap, grabbed my jacket. He yanked me back and I slammed against the siding of the house. Hold him still, the man with the syringe snarled. He raised the needle again. I looked at the liquid inside. It was clear. It looked innocent. But I knew it was a chemical straitjacket. It was oblivion. I closed my eyes and prepared for the darkness. Then the world exploded. A roar like a jet engine tore through the quiet suburban street. A massive black SUV smashed through the white picket fence, splintering wood and sending debris flying into the air. It didn't stop. It plowed through Courtney's prize-winning rose bushes and slammed into the porch railing just inches from where we stood. The wood of the porch buckled and groaned. The orderly with the syringe stumbled backward, falling off the steps in his panic. The needle flew from his hand and shattered on the concrete driveway. The man holding me froze his eyes wide with terror as the grill of the armored vehicle loomed over us. The back door of the SUV flew open. Get in, Luther. It was Jeremiah. He was inside, extending a hand. He wasn't wearing his trench coat. He was wearing a tactical vest over a dress shirt. I didn't think. I reacted. I shoved the frozen orderly away from me and dove toward the open car door. I scrambled over the leather seats, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Jeremiah grabbed my collar and hauled me inside. Go, he shouted to the driver. The driver, a man with a neck as thick as a tree trunk, slammed the accelerator. The tires screeched, smoking against the asphalt. We spun around in the driveway, clipping the Shady Pines van as we sped past. I looked out the back window. Terrence was standing on the porch amidst the ruin. He wasn't chasing us. He was staring. His mouth was open in a silent scream of rage. He looked like a demon whose contract had just been burned. We tore down the street, running a stop sign. The adrenaline was fading, and in its place came the shaking. My hands, my legs, my teeth, everything was vibrating. I had been seconds away from being drugged and dragged away. "You are late," I managed to say, my voice cracking. "Traffic," Jeremiah said calmly. He was checking a tablet mounted on the console. "Are you hurt?" "No," I said. "Just scared." "Good," Jeremiah said. "Fear keeps you sharp." We turned onto the highway, merging into the late-night traffic. The driver kept checking the mirrors. "We have a problem, boss," the driver said. His voice was deep and gravelly. "Police scanner is lighting up." "Turn it up," Jeremiah ordered. A burst of static filled the cabin, then a dispatcher's voice cut through. "All units be advised. Report of a kidnapping in progress at 422 Maple Street. Suspect vehicle is a black SUV. Suspects are described as armed and dangerous. Victim is an elderly black male with dementia. Caller identifies one suspect as a violent transient known to the victim." I sank lower in my seat. He called the police. He told them I was kidnapped. Of course he did, Jeremiah said. He is spinning the narrative. If the police find us, they will think they are rescuing you. They will hand you right back to him and send me to jail for abduction. It is a smart play. He is going to win, I whispered. The police are looking for us. We cannot hide a car this big. Jeremiah didn't look worried. He looked annoyed, like he was dealing with a fly at a picnic. He tapped the screen on his tablet. Earl switched the plates, he said to the driver, and activate the jammer. The driver pressed a button on the dashboard. I heard a mechanical whirring sound from the back of the car. The license plates were rotating, flipping to a new set of numbers registered to a different company. Jeremiah pulled out a burner phone and dialed a number. It is Stone, he said into the phone. We have a situation. I need the traffic cameras on I-95 looped for the next 20 minutes. Yes. Now. And get me a clean car waiting at the rendezvous point. The blue sedan. He hung up and looked at me. We are ghosts, Luther, he said. By the time the police set up a perimeter, we will be in a different vehicle in a different part of the city. Your son is playing checkers. I am playing three-dimensional chess. We drove in silence for 10 minutes, taking exit ramps and back roads, moving through the city's veins like a virus. We switched cars in an underground parking garage, leaving the battered SUV behind. We got into a nondescript blue sedan that smelled of pine air freshener. Once we were safe on the highway again, heading away from the city center, the tension in the car shifted. It wasn't the frantic energy of the escape anymore. It was something heavier, darker. Jeremiah opened a compartment in the seat back and pulled out a bottle of water. He handed it to me. Drink, he said. You need to hydrate. I took a sip. The water felt good on my dry throat. Jeremiah picked up the black binder again, the one from the vault. He looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. It was a mix of pity and anger. There is something else you need to know, Luther, he said. I shook my head. I know about the gambling. I know about the debt. I know he tried to commit me to sell the house. What else could there be? Jeremiah opened the binder to the back page. He hesitated, his finger tracing the edge of a document. When I bought his debt from the Greeks, I got his full file, Jeremiah said. The Greeks are meticulous record keepers. They make you sign contracts. They make you list your assets, your liquidity, your collateral. I know, I said. He listed the house. He listed more than the house, Jeremiah said softly. He turned the document around so I could read it. It was a promissory note scrawled in Terrence S. handwriting. It was dated 2 weeks ago. I stared at the words. They didn't make sense at first. My brain refused to process them. Collateral primary. Real estate property located at 422 Maple Street. Collateral secondary. Life insurance policy, number 445920. Insured Luther Banks. Collateral tertiary. In event of default and insufficient funds from primary and secondary sources, debtor agrees to transfer rights of guardianship for spouse Courtney Banks and unborn child to creditor for labor repayment. I read it again. And a third time. Labor repayment. He didn't just bet the house, he bet his wife, he bet his unborn child. If he didn't pay, the Greeks weren't just going to kill him, they were going to take Courtney, they were going to take my grandchild, and they were going to sell them, or use them. I felt a bile rise in my throat. I gagged, covering my mouth. He is a monster, I choked out. He is worse than a monster, Jeremiah said, his voice cold as ice. A monster acts on instinct. A monster kills to eat. Your son signed a contract trading the flesh and blood of his own family to save his fingers. He sat at that dinner table tonight knowing that if he didn't get your signature, his wife and child were going to be property of the mob. I thought about Courtney. I thought about how cruel she had been, how greedy. But she was carrying a child, my blood. And she didn't know. I was sure she didn't know. She thought this was just about money. She didn't know she was the backup plan. We have to save them, I said. Even Courtney. We have to save the baby. We will, Jeremiah said, but not by paying his debt. If we pay it, he learns nothing. And he will do it again. We save them by destroying him. We save them by taking away his power to sign his name on anything ever again. He closed the binder. Tomorrow is the merger meeting, Jeremiah said. The Stone Group is acquiring Banks and Associates, or at least that is what Terrence thinks. He is presenting to the board at 9 o'clock. He thinks he is going to walk out of that room a partner, a millionaire, and a free man. Jeremiah looked at me. He won't. But I cannot go in there looking like this, I said, gesturing to my clothes. I look like a victim. I look like a scared old man. Jeremiah smiled. That wolfish grin returned. We are not going to the penthouse tonight, Luther. We are going to my tailor. He opens at midnight for special clients. We drove to a quiet street in the upscale district. A small shop with no sign had a light on in the back. An old Italian man opened the door. He didn't ask questions. He just started measuring. For the next 2 hours, I was poked and prodded. I was shaved. My hair was trimmed and oiled. My fingernails were manicured. Jeremiah picked out a suit. It was a deep midnight blue made of wool so fine it felt like water. The shirt was crisp white. The tie was silk, a deep crimson red. When I put it on and looked in the mirror, I didn't see the railroad worker. I didn't see the man who counted pennies for the bus. I saw a man of substance. I saw a man of power. I saw a man who looked like he could buy and sell Terrence banks 10 times over. Jeremiah stood behind me in the mirror. He had shaved his beard, too. He was wearing a black suit that cost more than my car. He looked like a shark in human skin. "You ready, Luther?" he asked. I adjusted the tie. I thought about the document. I thought about the baby Terrence had used as collateral. "I am ready," I said. "Good," Jeremiah said. "Because tomorrow we are not just walking into a meeting. We are walking into an execution, and you are holding the axe." The heavy oak doors of the boardroom were thick enough to muffle sound, but they could not hide the smell of desperation. I stood outside in the hallway adjusting the silk tie Jeremiah had bought me. It felt cool and smooth against my neck, a stark contrast to the rough cotton work shirts I had worn for 40 years. Beside me, Jeremiah checked his watch. He didn't look like the man on the bus anymore. The beard was gone, revealing a jawline as sharp as a razor. His suit was tailored to perfection, a charcoal armor that screamed power. He looked at me and nodded. It was time. Inside the room, Terrence was speaking. I could hear his voice through the wood, confident and smooth. It was the voice he used when he was selling a lie. We didn't knock. Jeremiah pushed the double doors open, and they swung wide with a heavy, expensive thud. The room was massive. A long mahogany table stretched down the center, surrounded by 20 leather chairs. At the far end, Terrence stood in front of a projection screen. He was mid-gesture, his hand raised to emphasize a point about integrity. The word hung in the air like a bad joke. Integrity. He froze. His hand dropped. He stared at us, his mouth slightly open. Around the table, 12 men and women in expensive suits turned their heads. The silence was instant and absolute. Terrence's eyes locked on me first. For a second, I saw confusion. He didn't recognize the man in the midnight blue suit. He didn't recognize the father he had thrown out into the rain. Then recognition dawned, and with it came a flash of pure, unadulterated rage. He looked at Jeremiah next. He squinted, trying to place the clean-shaven face. Then he saw the eyes, the piercing blue eyes of the beggar he had ordered security to remove. "What is this?" Terrence snapped, his voice cracking slightly. He looked at the board members, then back at us. "This is a closed meeting. Security. Where is security?" He started walking toward us, his face flushing red. "You." He pointed a shaking finger at Jeremiah. "I told you to get out of my building. And Dad." He looked at me with disgust. "What are you wearing? Did you steal that suit? Get out, both of you, before I have you arrested for trespassing again." He was unraveling. The cool professional mask was slipping, revealing the panicked boy underneath. He reached for the phone on the conference table to call the guards. "Mr. Banks, sit down." The voice didn't come from Jeremiah. It came from the head of the table. An older man with silver hair and a face that looked like it belonged on money stood up. It was Arthur Sterling, the CEO of the firm Terrence was trying to impress, the man Terrence needed to sign the merger deal to save his life. But Mr. Sterling Terrence stammered, his hand hovering over the phone. "These men are intruders. This is my father and a homeless man he picked up off the street. They are mentally unstable." Arthur Sterling ignored him. He walked around the table, moving with a deference I had never seen a white man show to anyone in my neighborhood. He walked straight up to Jeremiah and extended his hand. "Mr. Stone," he said, his voice full of respect. "We were not expecting you in person. We thought you were sending a proxy." Jeremiah shook his hand firmly. "Plans changed, Arthur. I decided I needed to see the merchandise myself before I bought the store." Terrence made a sound like he had been punched in the gut. He gripped the back of a chair to steady himself. "Mr. Stone." He whispered the name. The color drained from his face, leaving him looking like wet ash. He looked from Arthur to Jeremiah, and the pieces finally clicked into place. The beggar, the VIP, the landlord, they were all the same man. And this, Jeremiah continued gesturing to me, is my associate, Mr. Luther Banks. He is a senior strategic partner in this acquisition. In fact, he holds the controlling vote on whether this merger proceeds. The room turned to look at me. 12 pairs of eyes assessed me. They didn't see a retired railroad worker. They didn't see a man who had been homeless 24 hours ago. They saw the suit. They saw the posture. They saw the power Jeremiah had draped over my shoulders. Mr. Banks, Arthur said, nodding to me, "It is an honor. Your son has told us so much about your family's values." I looked at Terrence. He was trembling. Sweat was beading on his forehead, running down his temples. He looked like a trapped animal. He knew that I knew everything. He knew about the gambling. He knew about the threats. He knew about the baby he had used as collateral. Values, I said, my voice deep and steady, filling the room. Yes, we should talk about values. I walked to the table and took the seat at the head opposite Arthur. Jeremiah sat beside me. Terrence was left standing alone in the middle of the room, exposed. "Please continue your presentation, son," I said. "I want to hear more about this integrity you were speaking of." Terrence tried to speak, but nothing came out. He looked at his notes, then at me. His hands were shaking so badly he knocked a glass of water over. It spilled across the polished wood, soaking his papers. I, he stammered. "Sit down," Banks, one of the board members, snapped. "You are embarrassing us." Terrence sank into a chair. He looked small. He looked defeated. But I wasn't done. I wasn't there just to scare him. I was there to end him. Jeremiah leaned forward, his elbows on the table. He looked like a shark circling a seal. "We have reviewed the financials of Banks and Associates," Jeremiah said. "On the surface, they look promising. Solid client base, good revenue stream." He paused. "But we dig deeper. We look at the liabilities, and we found some irregularities." Terrence flinched. "Irregularities?" Arthur asked, frowning. "What kind of irregularities?" "We found that a senior partner," Jeremiah said, his eyes fixed on Terrence, "has leveraged personal debts against firm assets. We found that company funds have been commingled with private accounts to cover gambling losses. We found that the very foundation of this firm is being eaten away by a cancer of debt and deceit." Arthur turned slowly to look at Terrence. "Is this true?" Terrence stood up, knocking his chair over. "No, it is a lie. He is lying. He is trying to sabotage me." I pulled the black binder from my briefcase. I slid it down the table toward Arthur. "It is all in there," I said. "The bank statements, the wire transfers to offshore accounts, the promissory notes signed with the firm as collateral." Arthur opened the binder. The room was silent except for the rustle of pages turning. Terrence watched the binder like it was a bomb. This is forgery," he shouted, his voice rising to a hysterical pitch. "My father, he has dementia. He doesn't know what he is doing. He is being manipulated by this man." Arthur looked up from the binder. His face was cold. "These are bank-certified records, Banks. These are not forgeries. You embezzled $300,000 from the client escrow account last month alone." Terrence looked at me. His eyes were pleading now. "Dad, please, tell them. Tell them I am a good man. Tell them I did it for the family." "For the family," I repeated. The words tasted like bile. "You sold my house for the family. You tried to lock me away in a state facility for the family. You traded your wife and unborn child to a loan shark for the family." A collective gasp went through the room. The board members looked at Terrence with horror. Arthur closed the binder with a snap. "You traded your wife?" Arthur asked, his voice quiet and dangerous. Terrence looked around the room, looking for an exit, looking for a friend. He found neither. "It was just a loan," he whispered. "I was going to pay it back. I just needed this merger. The bonus would have covered everything." Jeremiah stood up. He buttoned his jacket. "The Stone Group does not do business with gamblers," Jeremiah said. "And we certainly do not do business with men who sell their own blood to save their skin." He looked at me. "Partner, what is your vote?" I stood up. I looked at my son. I saw the boy I had raised buried under layers of greed and fear. I saw the monster he had become. And I knew what I had to do. I had to cut the cancer out before it killed anyone else. "I vote no," I said. Jeremiah nodded. "The merger is dead. And Mr. Sterling, if you want to avoid a federal investigation for facilitating embezzlement, I suggest you call the authorities immediately." Arthur nodded, pale and shaken. "Security," he barked. "Secure Mr. Banks. Do not let him leave the building. Call the police." Terrence's eyes went wide. "Police? No, you can't." He lunged toward me, not to hug me, to hurt me. His face was twisted into a snarl. "You ruined everything," he screamed. "You jealous old man." Two security guards tackled him before he got halfway down the table. They pinned him to the carpet. He thrashed and screamed, cursing me, cursing Jeremiah, cursing the world. I watched him. I felt a tear roll down my cheek. I didn't wipe it away. Jeremiah put a hand on my shoulder. "Come on, Luther. We are done here." We walked out of the boardroom, leaving the chaos behind us. As the doors swung shut, I heard Terrence screaming my name, but it didn't sound like son anymore. It sounded like a stranger. We walked to the elevator in silence. When the doors closed, Jeremiah looked at me. "You okay?" he asked. "No," I said, "but I will be." We rode down to the lobby, the same lobby where he had thrown my watch away. The receptionist was there. She looked at us, her eyes wide. She saw the suits. She saw the way we walked. She didn't say a word. We walked out into the sunlight. The air was fresh. "Is it over?" I asked. Jeremiah shook his head. "No, that was just the business. Now comes the hard part. The debt is still real, Luther. The Greeks are still waiting, and your son just lost his only way to pay them." He checked his watch. "He has 48 hours before the deadline. He is desperate, and desperate men do terrible things. We need to secure the assets. We need to secure Courtney." "Courtney?" I asked. "She is part of the collateral," Jeremiah reminded me. "If he goes down, he might try to take her with him, or trade her to buy time. We need to get to her before he makes bail." I thought about Courtney. I thought about how she had treated me, but I also thought about the baby. "Let's go," I said. We got into the town car. Jeremiah picked up the phone. "Get me the deed to the house on Maple Street," he said, "and get me a team to Courtney Banks' location, now." He hung up and looked at me. "You destroyed his career, Luther. You took away his money. Now we are going to take away his power. By the time this sun sets, your son is going to wish he had never been born. And you are going to be the one to show him why you never bet against a man who built the tracks the train runs on." The security guards had Terrence pinned against the mahogany table, but he was fighting like a wild animal. His face was purple with rage, and spit flew from his mouth as he screamed. He wasn't screaming for mercy. He was screaming for control. He twisted his body and managed to rip his hand free from the guard's grip, reaching into his inner jacket pocket. "Get off me!" he roared. "I am the managing partner of this firm. You cannot touch me. Look at the papers." He threw a crumpled document onto the polished table. It slid across the wood and stopped in front of Arthur Sterling. It was the power of attorney. The paper I had marked with my wax-coated thumb the night before. "Read it," Terrence shouted, his voice cracking with hysteria. "Read it, Arthur. He is incompetent. He is legally under my care. He cannot vote. He cannot speak. He has dementia. He does not know where he is. I have the power. I have the control." Arthur looked down at the paper. He saw the ink smudge where my signature should have been. He saw the notary seal that I knew was fake, stamped by the man the FBI had already arrested. For a second, the room wavered. The board members looked at each other. A legal document was a powerful thing. Even a fake one carried the weight of authority until it was proven false. Terrence saw their hesitation and pounced on it. "See," he panted, struggling against the guards. "He is sick. He signed it last night. He begged me to take over. This man standing here in the suit, he is a prop. He is being used by Stone to steal my company. Arrest Stone. Arrest my father for fraud. I am the victim here." His performance was terrifying. If I hadn't lived through the hell of the last week, I might have believed him myself. He sounded so convinced, so righteous. He was fighting for his life, and he was using my sanity as his shield. I stood up slowly. I buttoned my jacket. I didn't shout. I didn't look at the guards. I looked at Arthur Sterling. "Mr. Sterling," I said, my voice cutting through Terrence's screams. "My son claims I am confused. He claims I begged him to take control. He claims that document represents my will." I walked over to the side of the room where a sleek digital command console was mounted on the wall. It controlled the room's presentation systems. The lights, the projector, and the sound. I pulled the small black recorder from my collar. It was tiny, barely larger than a coin. I held it up so everyone could see it. "Technology is a funny thing," I said. "It remembers things that people try to forget." I plugged the recorder into the auxiliary port on the console. I turned the volume dial up to the maximum. Terrence stopped struggling. He froze. His eyes fixed on the small black device. He knew. In that split second, he knew his life was over. "No," he whispered. "Don't." I pressed play. The sound of the dinner party exploded into the boardroom, the clinking of silverware, the hum of the refrigerator, and then Terrence's voice amplified to a deafening roar. It wasn't the smooth professional voice he used in meetings. It was the voice of a thug. "Sign the damn paper, old man." The board members jumped. Arthur Sterling flinched. Then came the sound of the struggle, the sound of a chair scraping, the sound of my own voice weak and terrified. "Please, Terry, do not do this." And then the confession, the words that would hang him. "I need the money, Dad. I owe $500,000. Do you understand that? $500,000. If I do not get access to the equity in this house by tomorrow morning, they are going to kill me. They are going to cut me into pieces." The recording continued, playing the sound of him forcing my thumb onto the paper, the sound of his threats. "Now sign the paper, or so help me God, I will break your hand and make you sign it." I pressed stop. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. It was the silence of a tomb. I looked at Terrence. He had stopped fighting. He hung limp in the guard's grip. His face was the color of old paper. He looked at me, and for the first time I didn't see my son. I didn't see the boy I raised. I saw a stranger who had tried to destroy me. "That document," I said, pointing to the paper on the table, "is not a legal agreement. It is evidence of a crime. It is evidence of elder abuse. It is evidence of extortion." Arthur Sterling picked up the paper with 2 fingers as if it were contaminated. He looked at Terrence with pure disgust. "You threatened your father," Arthur said, his voice ice cold. "You physically assaulted him to cover your gambling debts." Terrence shook his head feebly. "No, it was just talk. I was stressed. I didn't mean it. But I wasn't finished." The recording was the nail in the coffin, but I had one more shovel of dirt to throw. I walked back to the table. Jeremiah handed me another folder. This one was blue. "You mentioned debts, Terrence," I said. "You mentioned that you needed to sell my house to pay them. But you forgot one thing. You didn't just borrow from the Greeks. You borrowed from the firm." I opened the blue folder. "You leveraged your partnership equity," I said, reading from the documents Jeremiah had compiled. "You took out loans against future earnings. You drained the operating capital accounts. You thought you could cover it up with this merger. You thought Mr. Stone's money would fill the hole before anyone noticed." I tossed the folder onto the table. It slid next to the fake power of attorney. "But Mr. Stone found the hole first," I said. "And he didn't just find it, he bought it." Terrence looked up, his eyes hazy with confusion. "What?" "I bought your debt, son," I said. "Not the gambling debt, the corporate debt, the loans you took out against this firm, the toxic assets you hid in shell companies. Mr. Stone's private equity fund purchased every single one of them this morning at 4 a.m. I leaned forward, placing my hands on the table. "Do you know what that means, Terrence? It means I am not just your father. I am not just a board member. I am your primary creditor. I own your debt. I own your equity. I own you." Terrence made a sound like a wounded animal. He slumped toward the floor, his legs giving out. The guards had to hold him up. "You cannot do that," he whispered. "You are a railroad worker. You do not have that kind of money." "I do now," I said. "Because I have a partner who values loyalty, something you know nothing about." Just then, the double doors at the back of the room burst open again. Terrence. It was Courtney. She rushed in her heels, clicking frantically on the floor. She was wearing a designer dress and carrying a bag that cost more than my car. She looked around the room, her eyes wide with panic. She saw Terrence being held by guards. She saw me at the head of the table. She saw the papers scattered everywhere. She didn't run to Terrence. She stopped 10 feet away from him. "What is happening?" she asked, her voice shrill. "Why are they holding you? Did the deal go through? Did we get the money?" She didn't ask if he was okay. She asked about the money. Terrence looked at her. He looked at the woman he had traded his soul for, the woman he had bet as collateral. "It is gone, Courtney," he croaked. "It is all gone. He knows everything. The gambling, the loans, he bought the debt." Courtney froze. She looked at me. She looked at the blue folder. Her mind was working fast, calculating the new reality. "He bought the debt," she repeated. "Yes," Terrence cried out, tears streaming down his face. "My father. He owns it all. We are bankrupt, Courtney. We have nothing." The transformation was instant. The worried wife vanished. The mask of the socialite fell away, revealing the predator underneath. Her face twisted into a mask of pure fury. "You lied to me," she screamed. She lunged at him. Not to comfort him, to attack him. "You told me you had it under control," she shrieked, slapping him across the face. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "You told me we were going to be rich. You told me the old man was handled." "You liar!" she screamed again, clawing at his face. "You useless, pathetic liar! You bet our lives. You bet me." The guards had to release Terrence to pull her off him. She was a whirlwind of nails and teeth. Terrence fell to the floor, curling into a ball, trying to protect his face. "Get off me!" she yelled as the guards restrained her. "I want a lawyer. I want a divorce. I didn't know anything about this. He tricked me. He forced me." She looked at me, her eyes wild. "Luther, tell them. Tell them he made me do it. I loved you. I always treated you well. It was him. He made me call the police. He made me change the locks." I watched her. I watched the woman who had sneered at my furniture, the woman who had called me an embarrassment, the woman who was currently carrying my grandchild. "Stop it, Courtney," I said, my voice low and hard. She stopped struggling, panting. Her hair was in her face. "It is over," I said. "I heard the tapes. I heard you planning to drive me crazy. I heard you laughing about selling my things. You weren't forced. You were a partner." Courtney's face crumpled. She realized her pivot had failed. She looked at Terrence, bleeding on the floor. She looked at the board members, looking at her with revulsion. She started to cry. Ugly, selfish tears. "But we have a baby," she wailed. "We have a family. You cannot leave us with nothing." I didn't answer her. I looked at Jeremiah. He nodded. "Mr. Sterling," Jeremiah said, addressing the stunned CEO, "I believe this meeting is concluded. My partner and I have some asset recovery to attend to. And I believe the police are waiting in the lobby." "Police?" Courtney gasped. "No, not police." Arthur Sterling picked up his phone. "Yes, send them up. Now." Terrence lay on the floor sobbing. Courtney stood there shaking, held by the guards. And I stood at the head of the table, feeling no joy, only a deep, heavy hollow in my chest. I had won. I had crushed them. But as I looked at the wreckage of my family, I realized that sometimes victory feels a lot like a funeral. "Come on, Luther," Jeremiah said gently. "Let us go." I walked past my son. I walked past my daughter-in-law. I didn't look back. I walked out of that room and left my old life on the floor with them. The silence in the boardroom was broken by the sound of heels clicking rapidly against the floor, but this time the rhythm was not arrogant. It was frantic. Courtney watched Terrence crumble onto the carpet, and she made a split-second calculation. I saw it happen in her eyes. I saw the exact moment she realized her husband was a dead weight that would drag her down to the bottom of the ocean. She looked at him with a flash of pure disgust, and then she looked at me. She didn't see an old man in a borrowed suit anymore. She saw a life raft. She stepped over Terrence's sobbing form as if he were a piece of discarded trash. She rushed toward me, her hands clasped in front of her chest in a gesture of pleading. Her face transformed. The sneer was gone, replaced by a look of terrified innocence. Tears welled up in her eyes instantly. It was a performance that rivaled anything Hollywood could produce. "Luther," she gasped, dropping to her knees in front of me. She grabbed the fabric of my trousers, her manicured nails digging in. "Oh, thank God you stopped him. Thank God you are here. You have no idea what I have been living with. You have no idea what he is really like." I looked down at her. This was the woman who had measured my living room for renovation while I was still sitting in it. This was the woman who had called the police and lied about me being violent. "Get up, Courtney," I said, my voice flat. "You are embarrassing yourself." She didn't get up. She clung tighter. "No, you have to listen to me, Dad, please." I tried to stop him. I begged him not to sell the house. I begged him not to hurt you. But he is a monster. He forced me. He said if I didn't go along with it, he would hurt me too. He threatened the baby. A murmur went through the board members. Arthur Sterling looked uncomfortable, shifting in his seat. It was a compelling lie. The abusive husband. The trapped wife. It was the perfect narrative to save her own skin. She looked up at me, mascara running down her cheeks. "I only did those things because I was scared, Luther. I love you. I always respected you. I was just trying to survive him. Please help me. For the sake of your grandchild, do not let me go down for his mistakes. I am a victim here. I felt a flash of anger so hot it almost blinded me. She was using the baby again. She was using my own blood as a shield, just like Terrence had used it as collateral. But where Terrence had acted out of desperate stupidity, Courtney was acting out of cold survival instinct. She was a chameleon, changing colors to match the threat. I looked at Jeremiah. He was leaning against the wall, watching the scene with a dark amusement. He nodded once, handing me a manila envelope he had been holding. It was the last piece of the puzzle, the final nail. I took the envelope. I looked at Courtney sobbing on the floor. "Get up," I said again, louder this time. She flinched and slowly rose to her feet, wiping her eyes, expecting me to offer comfort, expecting me to be the soft, foolish old man she thought I was. "You say he forced you?" I asked, opening the envelope. "You say you were a victim. You say you tried to stop him." "Yes," she breathed, nodding vigorously. "Every day. It was a nightmare." "Then explain this," I said. I reached into the envelope and pulled out a stack of high-resolution photographs. I tossed them onto the mahogany table. They fanned out like a deck of playing cards, revealing a story that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with greed. The first photo showed Courtney sitting at a cafe, not with Terrence, but with a man in a gray suit. They were laughing. His hand was over hers. The second photo showed her handing him a thick folder of documents. The third photo showed them entering a hotel room together. Courtney froze. Her face went ashen. She stopped crying instantly. "Who is that man, Courtney?" I asked, pointing at the photos. She stared at the images, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "I will tell you who it is," I said, my voice booming in the quiet room. "That is Marcus Vane. He is the lead counsel for the rival firm that has been trying to poach clients from Banks and Associates for years." Arthur Sterling stood up abruptly. He walked to the table and looked at the photos. "Vane," he whispered. "You were meeting with Vane." I pulled another document from the envelope. Jeremiah stepped forward, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "Mrs. Banks has been busy," Jeremiah said. "While her husband was gambling away the company funds, she was ensuring she had a golden parachute. We tracked her movements. For the last 6 months, she has been copying confidential client files, litigation strategies, settlement offers, and she has been selling them to Marcus Vane." Jeremiah tossed a bank ledger onto the table next to the photos. "She didn't do it for free," he continued. 3 offshore accounts under her maiden name. Total deposits over $200,000 in the last year alone. She wasn't a victim, Luther. She was a spy. She knew the ship was sinking because she was the one drilling holes in the hull. The room erupted. The board members were shouting. Arthur Sterling looked like he was about to have a stroke. Corporate espionage. Theft of trade secrets. This wasn't just unethical. It was a federal crime. I looked at Courtney. The mask was gone. There were no more tears. There was no more pleading. There was only a look of pure hatred. She realized the game was over. She realized I had outmaneuvered her at every turn. "You old fool," she hissed, dropping the act completely. "You should have just gone to the nursing home. You should have just died." And then Terrence moved. He had been lying on the floor, dazed and broken, listening to everything. He had heard his wife beg for mercy by blaming him. He had heard her claim he abused her, and now he had seen the photos. He had heard about the money she stashed away while he was begging loan sharks for another day of life. He let out a sound that wasn't human. It was a roar of pure, betrayed agony. He scrambled to his feet, blood dripping from his nose, his eyes wild and unfocused. "You sold me out," he screamed. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at the board. He looked only at Courtney. "I did everything for you," he shrieked. "I stole for you. I almost killed my father for you, and you were selling me to Vane. You were sleeping with him." Courtney took a step back, her eyes widening in genuine fear for the first time. "Terrence, wait. I can explain. You have 3 accounts," he yelled, lunging across the space between them. 3 accounts. "And I have nothing. I have nothing." He tackled her. It happened so fast the security guards couldn't stop him. They crashed into the side of the boardroom table, sending chairs flying. Courtney screamed a high, piercing sound as Terrence's hands found her throat. They rolled on the floor, a tangle of expensive fabric and violent rage. "You ruined me!" he screamed, squeezing. "You are the devil! Stop him!" Arthur Sterling shouted. "Get him off her!" The security guards dove into the fray. It took 3 of them to pull Terrence off. He was fighting with the strength of a man who had lost his soul. They dragged him back, slamming him against the wall. He slumped there, chest heaving, staring at his wife with eyes full of madness. Courtney lay on the floor, gasping for air, clutching her throat. Her dress was torn. Her perfect hair was a ruin. She looked up at me, coughing. "Help me," she wheezed. I looked down at her. I looked at the photos scattered on the table. I looked at the bank records Jeremiah had uncovered. "No," I said quietly. "I think I have helped you enough." Just then the main doors burst open again. But this time it wasn't a businessman or a lawyer, it was the police. 4 officers in tactical gear swarmed the room, guns drawn. "Police, everyone stay where you are," a sergeant barked. Arthur Sterling raised his hands immediately. "Over here, officers. These 2, I want to press charges immediately. Embezzlement, assault, corporate espionage. Take them both." The officers moved in. 2 of them grabbed Terrence, forcing his hands behind his back. The handcuffs clicked with a sound of finality. He didn't resist. He just stared at the floor, mumbling to himself about the money, the debt, the lies. 2 other officers hauled Courtney to her feet. She started screaming again, kicking and thrashing. "Do not touch me," she yelled. "I am pregnant. You cannot arrest me. I want my lawyer. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud and grand larceny," the officer said, reciting her rights as he clamped the cuffs on her wrists. I watched them. I watched my son, the boy I had carried on my shoulders, getting dragged away like a common criminal. I watched the woman who had invaded my home and tried to erase my existence getting marched out in disgrace. As they passed me, Terrence looked up. His eyes met mine. There was no anger left in them, only a vast empty hole where his spirit used to be. "Dad," he whispered, "help me." I looked at him. I remembered the rain. I remembered the text message sending me to Shady Pines. I remembered the needle in the driveway. "I cannot help you, son," I said, my voice breaking. "You made your bed. Now you have to sleep in it." The officer shoved him through the door. Courtney was dragged out behind him, still screaming threats, still blaming everyone but herself. The room fell silent. The storm had passed, leaving only wreckage in its wake. Arthur Sterling walked over to me. He looked shaken. He adjusted his suit jacket. "Mr. Banks," he said, holding out his hand. "I do not know what to say. We had no idea. We owe you a debt of gratitude. If this merger had gone through, if we hadn't known, it would have destroyed this firm." I shook his hand briefly. My grip was firm, but I felt tired, bone tired. "Just make sure the truth comes out," I said. "That is all I want." Arthur nodded. "It will. You have my word." Jeremiah stepped up beside me. He put a hand on my back. "You did good, Luther," he said softly. "You stood tall." I looked at the empty doorway where my son had vanished. "It doesn't feel good, Jeremiah," I said. "It feels like a funeral." Jeremiah nodded, solemnity on his face. "It is a funeral, Luther. You just buried the lie so you could live in the truth." "Come on," he said, guiding me toward the door. "Let us get out of here. This air is too thin for men like us." We walked out of the boardroom. We walked down the hallway past the staring employees who whispered behind their hands. We took the elevator down to the lobby. When we stepped outside, the sun was setting. The city was bathed in a golden light. The air smelled of exhaust and hot pavement, but to me it smelled like freedom. I stood on the sidewalk watching the traffic pass. I was homeless. I was alone. My family was in jail. But I was free. I wasn't a victim anymore. I wasn't a burden. I was Luther Banks. And I had survived. Jeremiah's town car pulled up to the curb. The driver opened the door. "Where to?" Boss, the driver asked. Jeremiah looked at me. "Where do you want to go, Luther? The penthouse is yours as long as you need it. Or I can buy you a hotel. Or a house. Name it." I looked at the city skyline. I thought about the empty house on Maple Street. I thought about the quiet of the night. "Just drive," I said. "I just want to drive for a while." We got in the car. As we pulled away, I didn't look back at the glass tower. I looked forward. The road was open. And for the first time in a long time, I was the one steering the wheel. 3 days after the boardroom explosion, I sat in the presidential suite of the Grand Meridian Hotel. Jeremiah had insisted. He said I needed a fortress, and he was right. The room was silent save for the hum of the city 20 floors below. I was drinking coffee from a china cup trying to reconcile the man I was now with, the man who had slept in a park just a week ago. The phone on the side table rang. It wasn't my cell phone. It was the hotel landline. Mr. Banks, the concierge, said, his voice polite but tense. "There is a man in the lobby claiming to be your son. He is causing a disturbance. Security is ready to remove him, but he insists he must speak with you. He says it is a matter of life and death." I walked to the window. I looked down at the street. I couldn't see him from up here, but I could feel him. I could feel his desperation rising like heat from the pavement. "Send him up," I said, "but tell security to wait outside the door." 10 minutes later, there was a knock. I opened the door. Terrence stood there. But it wasn't the Terrence who wore Italian suits and checked his reflection in every window. This was a ghost. His clothes were the same ones he had worn to the board meeting, but now they were wrinkled and stained with sweat. His tie was gone. His shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, showing a neck that looked thin and vulnerable. He hadn't shaved. His eyes were bloodshot, darting around the hallway like a hunted animal. He looked at me. He looked at the silk robe I was wearing. He looked at the luxury suite behind me. "Dad," he rasped. His voice was a dry croak. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. He stumbled into the room. He walked straight to the minibar, tore open a bottle of water, and drank it in one long gulp. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "I got bail," he said, not looking at me. "A bondsman took my watch and my car title. I got out an hour ago." "I know," I said. I sat down in a velvet armchair. I didn't offer him a seat. "I went home," Terrence said, turning to face me. His hands were shaking. "I went to Maple Street. There are chains on the door, Dad. There is a notice from the sheriff. Seized. Property of Stone Industries." He looked at me with a mixture of disbelief and horror. "You took my house. You actually took it." "I took my house back," I corrected him calmly. "And I took the asset you leveraged against a gambling debt." "It is not yours, Terrence. It never was." He fell to his knees. It wasn't a theatrical gesture this time. His legs just gave out. He crawled across the plush carpet until he was at my feet. "Dad, please. You have to help me. The Greeks know I am out. They know the merger failed. They called me 10 minutes ago. They gave me until midnight. If I do not have the money, they are going to kill me. Not sue me, not beat me. They are going to put a bullet in my head." I looked down at him. I remembered the needle in the driveway. I remembered the threat of an accident. "You threatened to kill me, Terrence," I said softly. "You told me accidents happen to old men." "That was just talk," he sobbed, grabbing my hand. I pulled it away. I was scared. I was desperate. "But these men are real, Dad. They are monsters. You have the money now. You are partners with Stone. Just pay them off. Please. It is pocket change to him. Save my life." I didn't answer. I just watched him weep. Then he played his final card. The card he thought was an ace. "Do it for Mom," he whispered, looking up at me through his tears. "Do it for Etta. She would not want this. She loved me, Dad. She worked so hard for me. She made you promise to take care of me. If she were here, she would beg you to save her baby boy. You know she would. How can you face her memory if you let them kill me?" He buried his face in his hands, sobbing loudly, invoking the spirit of the woman who had held our family together. He thought bringing up Etta would break me. He thought her name was his shield. He was wrong. Her name was his sentence. I stood up and walked to the safe in the closet. I punched in the code. I didn't take out money. I took out a small worn leather book. The cover was cracked with age. It smelled of lavender and old paper. I walked back and threw the book onto the floor in front of him. "Pick it up," I said. Terrence looked at the book, confused. "What is this?" "It is your mother's diary," I said. "She kept it for 30 years. I found it after she died. I never showed it to you because I wanted to protect you from the truth. But you are done being protected." Terrence opened the book with trembling fingers. "Turn to the last entry," I commanded. "October 14th, 3 days before she died." He flipped the pages. The handwriting was shaky, weak. Etta had been dying of heart failure, but she was still writing. "Read it out loud," I said. Terrence swallowed hard. He read in a whisper. "My chest hurts today. Hard to breathe. I finished the double shift at the diner. My feet are bleeding. But I got the money. $5,000. Terrence called. He is in trouble again. Gambling debts at school. He says they will expel him. He says he is scared." He stopped reading. He looked up at me. I remember that. I needed tuition money. Keep reading, I said, my voice hardening. He looked back at the page. Luther doesn't know. He thinks I am at the doctor. He thinks I am resting. I cannot tell him. It would break his heart to know his son is a thief. I am so tired. I gave Terrence the money. I hope this is the last time. But I fear it isn't. I fear I have raised a wolf who thinks he is a sheep. Terrence's voice wavered. He read the final lines. If I die, Luther promised me one thing. If he falls again, do not pick him up. I worked myself to death to clear his path, literally. My heart is giving out because I carried his sins. If he becomes a monster, let him fall. Do not save him if he turns into a devil. Let him face God on his own terms. Terrence dropped the book. He stared at it as if it had burned him. She knew, he whispered. She died because of you. I said, my voice trembling with a rage I had suppressed for 10 years. She didn't die of old age, Terrence. She died of exhaustion. She worked nights at a diner while she was sick to pay off your college bookie. She died cleaning floors so you could wear suits. I leaned down, getting close to his face. You killed your mother with your greed, and you tried to kill me with your fear, and you dare to use her name to beg for mercy. Terrence recoiled, curling into a ball. No, no, I didn't know. You knew, I roared. You knew she was sick and you took the money anyway. You took her life. And now you want mine. You want my house. You want my dignity. Well, the bank is closed, son. The vault is empty. I reached into the pocket of my silk robe. I pulled out a $50 bill and a single paper bus ticket. I threw them onto the floor next to the diary. That is $50, I said, and a ticket out of town. That is exactly what I had in my pocket when I arrived in this city 40 years ago. That is what I used to build a life. That is what I used to build a family. I pointed at the door. Take it and get out. Dad, please, Terrence wept. They are going to kill me. Then run, I said coldly. Run like I did. Run to the bus station. Get on the first bus heading anywhere. Change your name, scrub floors, dig ditches, become a man, Terrence. Because the boy you were died in that boardroom. He looked at the money. He looked at the ticket. He looked at me, hoping for a crack in the armor, hoping for the father who forgave everything. He found only the man who laid railroad tracks, hard, unyielding, iron. Pick it up, I said. He reached out his hand, shaking violently. He grabbed the bill. He grabbed the ticket. He stood up, swaying on his feet. He looked like a skeleton in a ruined suit. I have nothing, he whispered. I have no wife, no child, no home, no name. You have $50, I said. That is more than most. He turned toward the door. He walked slowly, dragging his feet. He put his hand on the doorknob. Goodbye, Luther, he said. He didn't say Dad. Goodbye, Terrence, I replied. He opened the door and walked out into the hallway where the security guards were waiting. The door clicked shut. I stood alone in the silence. I looked down at Etta's diary on the floor. I picked it up and kissed the worn leather cover. I kept my promise. Etta, I whispered. I let him fall. I walked to the window. I watched the street below. 10 minutes later, I saw a small figure exit the hotel. He looked left, then right. He pulled his collar up against the wind. He started walking toward the bus station. I watched him until he disappeared into the city traffic. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel sad. I felt light. The weight of his sins, the weight of protecting him from himself, was finally gone. My phone buzzed. It was Jeremiah. Is it done? He asked. It is done, I said. Good, Jeremiah said. Meet me downstairs. We have one more stop to make, and bring your checkbook, Luther. We are going to do something good with all that bad money. The bus ticket I gave Terrence took him as far as the edge of the city where the pavement cracked and the streetlights flickered like dying pulses. This was the Bottoms. It was a place where hope went to die and where debts were collected in blood. Terrence stumbled off the bus. His midnight blue suit was stained with sweat and grime. He had lost one of his Italian shoes in the scuffle at the hotel and was limping. He looked like a fallen prince wandering through a graveyard. He tried to hide in an alleyway behind a liquor store. He curled up behind a dumpster, shivering not from the cold but from the withdrawal of his power. He had been a king in the morning and now he was nothing. He thought he was safe in the shadows. He thought he had escaped, but the Greeks had eyes everywhere. A black sedan rolled slowly down the street. It didn't look like a police car or a luxury vehicle. It looked like a shark patrolling a reef. It stopped right in front of the alley. 2 men got out. One of them was the man with the spider tattoo on his neck. The man Terrence owed $500,000 to. Terrence saw them and tried to run. He scrambled over garbage bags, slipping on rot and filth, but he was weak. He was soft. The men caught him before he made it 10 feet. They didn't shout. They didn't make a scene. They simply grabbed him by the collar of his ruined shirt and threw him against the brick wall. "Please," Terrence begged, putting his hands up. "I can get the money. I just need time. My father, he is rich now. He will pay you." The man with the spider tattoo laughed. It was a dry, dusty sound. "Your father bought your debt from the books, kid, but you still owe us for the inconvenience. You owe us for the time we wasted watching you pretend to be a big shot." They didn't break his legs. That would have been too easy. Instead, they stripped him. They took the jacket, they took the shirt, they took the remaining shoe, they took his watch, they took his wallet, which was already empty. They left him in his underwear, shivering in the filth of the alley. "You are not worth killing," the man said, leaning close to Terrence's face. "You are worth zero. You are a ghost. If we see you in the city again, we won't just take your clothes. We will take your skin." They left him there. Terrence slid down the wall, hugging his knees to his chest. He wasn't crying anymore. He was hyperventilating. His eyes were wide, darting around the dark, terrified of the rats, terrified of the cold, terrified of the man he had become. He was completely broken. The arrogance was gone, scraped away by the rough brick of the alley wall, leaving only a raw, terrified animal. I watched it all. I was sitting in the back of Jeremiah's town car, parked across the street. The windows were tinted dark so no one could see in, but I could see out. I saw my son being thrown against the wall. I saw him stripped. I saw him left in the dirt. My hand moved to the door handle. It was an automatic reflex, a father-s reflex. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to open the door, to run across the street, to cover him with my jacket, to pick him up and tell him it was going to be okay. He was my boy. He was the child I had held in my arms when he had a fever. He was the toddler I had taught to walk. Seeing him like that, shivering and broken, tore a hole in my heart that felt like it would never heal. I gripped the handle tighter. My knuckles turned white. I could end this right now. I could snap my fingers and Jeremiah would have him in a hospital in 20 minutes. I could pay off the Greeks. I could send him to rehab. I could fix it. That is what I had always done. I had always fixed it. Jeremiah's hand landed on my wrist. His grip was firm but gentle. "Do not do it, Luther," he said softly. I looked at him, tears streaming down my face. "He is my son, Jeremiah. Look at him. He is going to die out there. If you open that door," Jeremiah said, looking me in the eye, "you kill him. Not his body, his soul. If you save him now, he learns nothing. He will think there is always a safety net. He will think he can sell his family and get away with it because Daddy will always come to the rescue. You have to let him burn, Luther. It is the only way he rises from the ashes." I looked back at the alley. Terrence was curling into a ball trying to keep warm. He looked so small. "Remember the diary," Jeremiah whispered. "Remember what Etta wrote. Do not pick him up." I closed my eyes. I saw Etta's face. I saw her tired eyes. I saw her working double shifts while her heart failed. She had died saving him. If I saved him now, I would be dishonoring her sacrifice. I would be making her death meaningless. I let go of the handle. My hand dropped to my lap. It felt like I had just cut off my own arm. "Drive," I whispered. My voice was broken. "Just drive." The car pulled away slowly. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I stared straight ahead at the city lights blurring through my tears. I had chosen justice over mercy. I had chosen the hard path, and it hurt more than anything I had ever felt. We left him there. Terrence spent that night in the alley. He spent the next week on the streets. The man who had worn $1,000 suits learned what it tasted like to eat a half-finished burger out of a trash can. The man who had dined in 5-star restaurants learned to fight stray dogs for a dry spot to sleep. He became part of the invisible city, the people he used to step over without a second glance. He had no name. He had no future. He was just another shadow in the bottoms. Meanwhile, justice came for Courtney on a different front. She didn't end up on the street. She ended up somewhere colder. The federal investigation into her corporate espionage was swift and brutal. The evidence Jeremiah and I had provided was irrefutable. She tried to cut a deal. She tried to blame Terrence. She tried to use her pregnancy as leverage. But the judge was not moved. She was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison for grand larceny, conspiracy, and fraud. Because she was pregnant, she would be housed in a special medical unit until the birth. After that, the baby, my grandchild, would be placed into the system, unless a family member stepped forward. I signed the papers the day after her sentencing. I petitioned for custody. It was a long process, but with Jeremiah's lawyers and my clean record, the state granted it. The baby would come to me. I would not let another bank's child be raised by wolves. I would raise this child right. I would teach them the value of a dollar and the value of a soul. 6 months passed. The leaves turned brown and fell. Snow began to cover the city. I had moved into a modest house near the new legal aid center I was building. It wasn't a mansion, but it was warm, and it was mine. I was sitting on the porch drinking coffee and watching the snow fall when the mailman arrived. He handed me a stack of letters, bills, flyers, and one small white envelope. It had no return address, but I recognized the handwriting instantly. It was shaky. It was messy, but it was his. The postmark was from the state penitentiary. Terrence had been picked up for vagrancy and petty theft a month ago. He was serving 6 months in county. I stared at the envelope. My heart started to hammer against my ribs. For 6 months I had heard nothing. No calls, no pleas for money, just silence. I sat down on the porch swing. My hands trembled as I tore open the flap. Inside was a single sheet of lined yellow paper. I unfolded it. I expected anger. I expected begging. I expected him to ask for a lawyer or a deposit in his commissary account. There were only 3 words written in the center of the page. I am sorry. I stared at the words. The ink was smudged in places as if he had been crying or his hands had been dirty. There was no request, no excuse, just 3 simple words. I ran my thumb over the paper. For the first time in 6 months, I felt a knot loosen in my chest. He hadn't asked for money. He hadn't asked for help. He had just apologized. It wasn't redemption. Not yet. But it was a start. It was the first honest thing my son had done in 10 years. I folded the letter and put it in my pocket next to his mother's diary. I looked out at the snow covering the world, making everything clean and new. Maybe Jeremiah was right. Maybe you have to burn it all down before you can build something real. I stood up and went inside. I had a nursery to paint, and for the first time in a long time I had hope. I sat in the nursery, the smell of fresh paint filling the room. The walls were a soft yellow, the color of sunshine, the color Etta had always loved. The crib was assembled, standing in the corner, waiting for the new life that would soon fill this house. But my mind wasn't on the future. It was on the piece of paper trembling in my hands. I read Terrence's letter for the 10th time. The handwriting was cramped and erratic, written with a dull pencil on cheap commissary paper. There were no requests for money. There were no pleas for a lawyer. There were no excuses about bad luck or misunderstandings. It was just a raw accounting of his days. He wrote about washing trays in the mess hall. He wrote about the cold in the cell block. He wrote about the silence at night when the lights went out and he was left alone with his thoughts. He wrote about Etta. He said he finally understood what I had meant about her hands. He said his own hands were raw from scrubbing floors, and every time he looked at them, he thought of her working double shifts at the diner. He said he was sorry he had dishonored her sacrifice. He said he was sorry he had tried to sell the home she built. I folded the letter carefully. A part of me, the father part, the part that had carried him on my shoulders, wanted to rush to the phone. I wanted to call the best defense attorney money could buy. I wanted to put money in his account so he could buy extra food or a warm blanket. I wanted to fix it. I had the power now. I had the resources. One call from Luther Banks' partner at Stone Industries, and his life would get easier. But I didn't make the call. I put the letter in the top drawer of the dresser next to the baby clothes. I left it there. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. Harder than laying track in the summer heat. Harder than walking away from the boardroom. But I knew that if I softened the blow, if I cushioned his fall, I would be robbing him of his redemption. He needed to feel the cold. He needed to scrub the floors. He needed to rebuild his soul from the ground up, just like I had to rebuild my life. I felt a strange lightness settle over me. It wasn't happiness exactly, but it was peace. The guilt that had followed me for months, the feeling that I had failed him as a father, finally began to fade. I hadn't failed him. I was loving him the only way that mattered now. I was loving him enough to let him become a man. I stood up and walked to the window. The snow was melting, revealing the first shoots of green grass. Life was returning. The winter was over. 2 weeks later, I stood on a podium in front of a renovated brick building in the heart of the city. A large crowd had gathered. Reporters flashed cameras. City officials stood in stiff rows, smiling for the press. Beside me stood Jeremiah. He was wearing a suit that cost $5,000, but he still stood with the slouch of a street fighter, his eyes scanning the crowd for threats. Above us, a large banner snapped in the breeze. The Bank Center for Senior Justice. This wasn't just a law firm. It was a fortress for the forgotten. It was a place where the elderly, the vulnerable, and the discarded could come for protection. We had hired the toughest lawyers in the state, men and women who hated bullies as much as I did. We had social workers, investigators, and forensic accountants. We were building an army to fight the kind of war I had fought alone. I stepped to the microphone. My hands didn't shake. I looked out at the sea of faces. "My name is Luther Banks," I said, my voice booming over the speakers, and I was almost erased. I was almost silenced by the people who were supposed to love me. I told them a condensed version of my story. I talked about the isolation. I talked about the fear. I talked about the feeling of being invisible in your own home. I saw heads nodding in the crowd. I saw old women wiping tears. I saw younger people looking down at their shoes in shame. "We are here to say that you are not invisible," I continued. "We are here to say that your life has value. Your sweat built this city. Your sacrifices built these families. And we will not let anyone take your dignity, not for a house, not for a check, not for anything." I cut the ribbon. The crowd cheered. It was a sound like thunder. As the ceremony broke up and people began to tour the facility, I saw a commotion near the entrance. A young man in a sharp suit was arguing with an elderly woman. She looked frail, dressed in a coat that was too thin for the weather. She was crying. "You have to sign it." "Mom," the young man was hissing, gripping her arm. "It is just a loan application. I need the money for the business." I felt the heat rise in my chest. It was a familiar heat. I looked at Jeremiah. He had seen it too. He was already moving. We walked over. The young man didn't notice us until my shadow fell over him. "Let her go," I said. The young man spun around. He looked annoyed. "Who are you? This is a family matter." "Beat it, old man." He didn't know who I was. He didn't know he was standing in front of the man whose name was on the building. "I am Luther Banks," I said. "And this is my property. And on my property we do not grab women." The young man sneered. "Look, Grandpa, I am just trying to help my mother. She is confused. She doesn't understand finance. She understands fear," I said, stepping closer. I saw the look in her eyes. It was the same look I had when Terrence forced my thumb onto that paper. I turned to the woman. "Ma," I asked gently, "do you want to sign that paper?" She shook her head, tears spilling over. "No, it is my house. It is all I have left." "Then you do not have to sign it," Jeremiah said, stepping up beside me. His voice was low and dangerous. The young man looked at Jeremiah, then at me. He saw the way we stood. He saw the security guards moving toward us. His arrogance evaporated. "Fine," he spat, releasing her arm. "Do what you want, Mom, but do not come crying to me when the roof leaks." He stormed off, disappearing into the crowd. The woman stood there, rubbing her arm. She looked terrified. She looked alone. "I know that feeling," I said to her. "I know what it feels like when the person you carried turns into a stranger." She looked up at me. "What do I do?" she whispered. "He is my son." I took a card from my pocket. It was heavy cream-colored cardstock. It had my name and a direct line. "You come inside," I said, pointing to the open doors of the center. "You talk to our lawyers. We will put the deed in a trust. We will protect your assets. We will make sure he cannot touch a dime without your permission." "But he will hate me," she said, her voice trembling. "He might," I said, "but he will respect you, and you will respect yourself. And that is worth more than his love right now." Jeremiah offered her his arm. "Come on, my dear," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "Let us get you a cup of coffee. We have a lot of work to do." I watched them walk inside. I felt a circle closing. I had been the man on the bus needing a hand. Now I was the hand reaching back. It was a good feeling. It was the best feeling. An hour later, the crowd had dispersed. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of purple and orange. Jeremiah and I walked out of the center. A black limousine was waiting at the curb, the driver holding the door open. Jeremiah looked at the limo, then he looked at me. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a handful of coins. He jingled them in his hand. "You know Luther," he said. "It is a nice night." I smiled. I reached into my own pocket. I didn't carry loose change anymore, but I always kept $2 in quarters just in case. "It is a beautiful night, Jeremiah," I said. We waved the driver away. He looked confused, but he closed the door and drove off. We walked to the bus stop on the corner. We stood there, two men in bespoke suits worth thousands of dollars waiting for the number 42 bus. People walked by and stared. They didn't know what to make of us. Were we bankers? Were we politicians? Were we crazy? The bus rumbled up its brakes, squealing. The doors hissed open. The driver was the same one from that first day. He looked at us. He looked at the suits. He looked at Jeremiah's clean-shaven face. His eyes went wide. "You guys again?" the driver asked. Jeremiah dropped his coins in the box. "Just two working men heading home," he said, winking. I dropped my quarters in. It sounded like a bell. We walked to the back of the bus. We sat in the same seats. The plastic was hard and cold. The bus smelled of diesel and wet coats. It was loud. It was bumpy. It was perfect. "Why do we do this?" Jeremiah asked, looking out the window as the city rolled by. "We could be drinking scotch in the back of a Rolls-Royce." I looked out the window too. I saw the people on the street. I saw the workers heading home. I saw the life of the city. "Because you cannot see the world through tinted windows, Jeremiah," I said. "You forget what it looks like. You forget what it feels like to struggle. And if you forget the struggle, you forget the people." Jeremiah nodded. "You are right, partner. You are always right." He leaned back, crossing his legs. "So what is next?" "We fixed the law firm. We built the center. What do we conquer tomorrow?" I thought about it. I thought about the baby coming. I thought about Terrence in his cell. I thought about the thousands of people like me who were still waiting for someone to stand up for them. "Tomorrow," I said, watching the sun dip below the skyline, turning the clouds into fire. "Tomorrow we go back to work. There are a lot of bullies out there, Jeremiah, and I think I am just getting started swinging back." The bus turned a corner heading east. Through the front windshield I could see the moon rising pale and sharp against the darkening sky. It was a new night, but for the first time in a long time I wasn't afraid of the dark. I had walked through the fire and I had come out the other side. I was Luther Banks, and I was finally home. I learned that blood does not define family loyalty and respect do. For decades I believed my worth was measured by how much I could sacrifice, even when it meant erasing myself. But love should never require you to lose your dignity. Real strength isn't just about enduring pain, it is about having the courage to stand up and say enough. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let people face the consequences of their own choices. My life didn't end with their betrayal, it truly began the moment I decided to stop being a victim. If you believe that dignity is non-negotiable and that it is never too late to start over, please like this video and subscribe for more stories of justice.